Yo Atlas speaking, and welcome to the finale of What If I Was Reincarnated in the world of One Piece with zero knowledge of the series. Let the tale begin. Let the tale begin. Chapter 186. Mary Geoise, for how long has it been? Upon fending off the endless assaults one after the other, Ace found his vision turning hazy in exhaustion. The jaw-opening beams of laser shot out of the pacifista's mouths, one after the other. The sky was black, full of the winged creatures that attacked the Revolutionary Army and their allies with hostility. The gigantic warship, Pluton, continued its domineering advance upon the rebellion with its ferocious drill spinning nonstop. The capable enemies, the Marine officers, the world government agents, and the warlords prevented the Revolutionary Army from reaching the Pangea Castle. Huff. Fuck huff of Ace, though unable to conceal his fatigue, snarled as he faced Tensei, who was seen with many notable wounds. Yet, the latter didn't exhibit any pain. My point still stands, Iron Fist. Tensei raised up his hand and adjusted his glasses, which had one of its lenses shattered. You can't pass, and you never will. Tensei's marine justice coat was nowhere to be seen, and his clothes were tattered, indicating that an intense battle was ongoing. Behind Ace, Sabo was holding his side, in order to prevent any further blood from spilling out. Hold on for a little longer, Ace. Sabo shifted his eyes to Dragon knowingly. Supreme Commander Dragon always has a plan. At the distant sight, Garp and Mihawk's fight was endless. All the way from the day up to now, their incredible battle didn't seem to have lost its pace. Boom, boom, boom. Garp was seen with many gashes over his body. In an attempt to reach the Pangea Castle, Garp disregarded the damages that will accumulate from Mihawk's attacks and continued his attempt to advance forward. How stubborn! Mihawk commented with calm eyes as he blocked another punch from Garp with his sword. Yoru, BOM, Monkey D. Garp, it's only the present that you think of, and not the upcoming consequences that follow after. Mihawk then swung his Yoru horizontally, causing the air itself to be sliced momentarily. The vacuum was generated from the sheer strength of Mihawk's slash, and the air was sucked into the area of impact in a bizarre fashion. BOM, however, Garp countered such a slash with his fist. When it came to armament hockey, there was no one whose mastery surpassed Garp's, after all. To think Dracul Mihawk was this strong. The tribe of D. I despise you. There exists nothing but remorse when I gaze into your kind. Mihawk's eyes gleamed in hatred as he adjusted his hat, before vanishing from his spot, boom, to stop Garp's propulsion to the Pangea Castle. Hawk-Eye! Garp shouted with anger as he stood up from the ruins. Just how annoying can you get? By now, Garp's attempt was prevented for the 100th time. Damn it, Luffy! Garp cursed, but began his run toward the Pangea Castle again with no hesitation. At some distance away, Isho was standing calmly. After everyone from the sea joined the war, Isho was using his fruit ability continuously to drop the sky creatures, controlled by Uranus, to the ground. Boom, even now, another sky creature with long beaks and huge pair of wings crashed onto the ground, with a boulder having slammed onto it from the sky. It sure is taxing, especially when the hordes of those sky creatures are non-ending. Isho muttered to himself, but slashed his sword rapidly, causing the sky creature below the boulder to be cut into pieces instantly. But aren't you underestimating the name value of the former Marine Admiral? Subsequently, the sand swirled around the Revolutionary Army, before clustering into a huge hand that pushed against the Pluton, whose drill in the middle was rotating frighteningly. Vivi was notably tired. She was huffing non-stop, her arms were trembling from the stress, and she was swaying from side to side. For hours, she has been protecting everyone from the continuous attacks from the Pluton, which allowed the Allied force to combat the Marine and world government agents without worries. But now, she seemed to be reaching her limit. Brilliant! Punk! Nearby, Jozu slammed his diamond-turned body onto the exposed abdomen of one vice admiral, causing the latter to cough blood while crashing onto the ground. Marco, who was in his phoenix form, opened his wings wide open within the dark, before generating a huge mass of yellow-blue-colored flame, Phoenix Pyreapple. Upon twisting his body rapidly, the flames latched themselves on the allies before healing them. It was all thanks to Marco that they were able to last this long. You don't in your mew. Weevil shouted slowly as he jumped up to the sky, to where Marco was flying, while holding his naginata above his head. Huh. Nearby, Zoro pulled out his embedded sword from the ground with shaky arms, before biting its hilt with his teeth. Three-sword style, Zoro, though seemed tired, swung his swords at Basil Hawkins rapidly, whose body has enlarged into a straw doll-like appearance. Demon Slash. The three swords slashed the straw man, Hawkins, simultaneously. In such a short span of time, Zoro made incredible growth under Garp's guide, to an extent where Hawkins wasn't able to dodge. However, a doll then popped out of Hawkins's arm and fell down to the ground, life -1. And instead of Hawkins, it was Zoro who received the critical wounds over his exposed top. Ugh. Zoro gritted his teeth with his eyes bloodshot, as he struggled not to fall down. His body was in a mess, drenched in his own blood. You don't seem to understand, Hawkins said stoically. With my ability, I am able to sacrifice another's life in place of mine. And just now, I've used yours. So what is it that makes my death nigh impossible to prevent? Oh, I understand very well. Zoro grinned as he disregarded the bleeding gashes on his body. BOM at the same time, Sanji was sent flying to the air with a visible injury on his stomach, for he was blasted by Beej's cannonball. Quite fast. But your kicks aren't strong enough to crumble my wall down. Beej, whose whole body was enlarged into a huge, castle-like feature, said before taking a puff out of his cigar. Although he was internally surprised by the seemingly endless stamina of Sanji, he didn't express it outward. A cook belongs in a kitchen, not on a battlefield. However, Sanji retained his calm in this situation. Strange. Why does my body not hurt? He could feel it. For some reason, his body has become incredibly resilient. Just like the accursed family of Germa 66 who disowned him. Damn it. It's not the time to think about that. If this power can help me to save Luffy, I'll embrace it for now. While flying up in the air, his body began to rotate at a rapid speed. Beej watched Sanji without caution, for it was proven that none of the blonde's attacks were able to harm him. Besides, that blonde isn't who I should be worried about. If anything, it's that Diamond Jozu nearby. Just as Beej thought, raw ingredient doesn't seem to be in a good condition, but I'm not in a position to complain, Sanji stated with his right leg blazing up into a brilliant red. Subsequently, his body began to descend to Beej. And a battlefield? To me, this is the kitchen. From Beej's shoulders, the cannons slowly revealed themselves, ready to fire at Sanji. Big cannon. However, the cannonballs missed Sanji, who was dropping too fast. Diable jam. Beej then found Sanji's kick slamming into his castle-like body. Kurg. Beej's eyes widened as his body began to shrink uncontrollably. What? In an instant, his vulnerable body was roasted to an incredible degree. Boom! Simultaneously, nine-sword style, Hawkins found his eyes widened upon sighting Zoro, who seemed to have grown 2 additional bodies around himself. Am I hallucinating? Zoro's will surfaced from the depth of his soul. Unknown to himself, his swords began to flicker in black, indicating that he was unconsciously morphing his will into armament haki, hardening. Then, before Hawkins had the time to react, Zoro suddenly appeared behind him. Azura! Hawkins's whole body shredded apart, as if grinded by a grinder. His whole body exploded into the blood as he lifelessly flew up. How come? My fruit ability didn't. That was Hawkins's last thought prior to his departure from life. On the blade of one of Zoro's 3 swords, and on the sole of Sanji's right leg, the sea stones gleamed. Hawkins and Beej were seen flying up in the air, as their bodies splattered blood everywhere. Tap Sanji landed next to Zoro and lit up his cigarette. Sea stone TCH. This is the only time I'm using this, Zoro said as he stared at Beej and Hawkins, who crashed in the middle of the marine soldiers. In no way. 2 warlords are down. one Marine cried in terror, but was immediately silenced by Kong, who was holding onto a pistol. Fight like the soldiers that you are. Any act of lowering an ally's moral will be considered as an act of treason, Kong said gruffly, before clicking his tongue. Capone, Gang Beej, and Magician, Basil Hawkins, useless just like the scums that they are. Barrier crash. Bartolomeo, with desperate eyes, sent the huge wall of barrier toward the Pangea castle. However, boom, it was easily blocked by Kong, who held his hockey-imbued right hand out. Weak, Kong said with annoyance. Captain Luffy. But the crazed Bartolomeo didn't seem to hear Kong's statement. Screaming madly, he continued to send the waves of barrier walls, which Kong blocked without moving a single step. BOM, 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 two warlords out of commission. Useless as expected. Sakazuki, who was standing in front of Dragon, stated stoically, however, they aren't as despicable as someone like you, who claims your immoral rebellion to be a revolution. You filths who defile the meaning of justice. Did you think that your pesky attempt to invade Mary Geoise will work? Dragon didn't respond. His eyes were locked onto the Pangea castle, as he sent the sharp streams of wind over and over, only to see that they were blocked by Sakazuki's blasts of magma. Answer me, Dragon, Sakazuki roared, but Dragon simply frowned in displeasure. Just a little longer. Because he was busy thinking. There certainly existed a way out of this situation, and the hardship of this caliber was something that Dragon expected beforehand. It should be about now. Initially, the invasion of the Mary Geoise wasn't to be initiated this early. Such decision was based on one unexpected gain that they had prior to their arrival here. It was something that he didn't tell anyone, in case a spy existed in their ranks, which turned out to be Lindbergh. From down the red line, on the side of the Paradise, Law was sitting on the submarine of his crew with his eyes shadowed by his hat. While the war was ongoing, the Heart Pirates traveled underwater and crossed the red line as fast as they could. Reason? To aid in two people's infiltration. I've sent them just as you said. Monkey D. Dragon. Law thought with his arms crossed, and now, there exists one variable in the game. Emu. BOM. The war in the Mary Geoise stopped momentarily. Without a doubt, the extreme noise came from Pangea Castle, the place that the world government believed to have secured without a doubt. A huge explosion. One section of the Pangea Castle was blown up all of a sudden, and Luffy, the frail body of one man in sea stone cuffs, Monkey D. Luffy, flew out of the castle. Dragon, with narrowed eyes, used his ability to immediately propel himself high up in the air. As if, Sakazuki immediately chased after Dragon with his huge fist of magma ready to pierce through the ladder. Great. But he then found his body becoming heavier all of a sudden. He couldn't reach Dragon, but fall back all of a sudden. Upon turning his attention downward, Sakazuki realized, Isho. It was Isho who intensified the magnitude of gravity of Sakazuki. What a loyal dog that you are, Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. All members of the Revolutionary Army grinned as they saw Dragon finally catching Luffy. It's been more than 17 years, Luffy. A late and weird reunion, but, Dragon whispered gently, I'm glad that you are alive, my son. Dragon landed back to the ground and was about to hand Luffy to the capable hands Puke, but froze upon a tragic sight that suddenly entered the scene. Huh. Garp was dumbfounded. Slowly lowering his eyes, he found a sharp spike of sea stone that appeared out of nowhere, impaling him through the heart. How ignorant that you are. Mihawk. No, the man whom everyone believed to be Mihawk, said coldly, you believed me to be the Hawkeye all along, haven't you? From where the Pangea Castle lied, the dust finally cleared, revealing Sengoku and Tsuru. They were facing off against Dracul Mihawk. Dragon finally realized the man whom father was fighting against wasn't Mihawk all along. Gee, Garp. Garp's miserable sight was the first thing that Sengoku noticed, but he had to return his attention to Mihawk quickly, as the latter continued to push his sword onto Sengoku's open palm. Ace screamed in disbelief, Gramps! Dragon's eyes wavered as his grip on unconscious Luffy tightened. Then, under everyone's eyes, the man in Mihawk's appearance began to melt. No, to be more precise, the outlook turned into a colorless water and evaporated into thin air. Now stood one enigmatic man with a slim and attractive appearance. He had a long and straight black-colored hair. His appearance was quite similar to Dracula Mihawk, though seemed younger with no trace of mustache or beard. Along with the cold expression, his blood-red-colored eyes with the thin circles that surrounded the pupils peered into the shocked Garp. "You gotta be kidding me, all right?" Ace muttered hollowly, unable to believe what was going on in the front. Dragon growled in rage, "Emu! Emu!" In the middle of the battlefield, the supposed god of the world finally made an appearance. Chapter 187. Cough. Herg. Garp, with difficulty, gripped onto the sea stone spike that penetrated his heart. "Don't pull it out. Let it stay until I reach over there." Marco, with an evident panic on his face, quickly began his dive from the sky to Garp in an attempt to heal the latter. "Hang on." Simultaneously, the storm around Dragon intensified to a frightening degree. His body started to levitate off of the ground, and his hair wildly flew due to the wind. Someone of your caliber, resorting to a petty trick like this, it sure was unexpected from our side. Dragon, though in a trembling voice, struggled to maintain his calm. "But don't think for a second that we've come here without considering your presence." Paz the cloud above the Mary Geoise crackled. It was fully charged, due to Dragon's continuous blasts of wind bumping into the particles and generating electricity. Emu didn't state a single word. Instead, with bored eyes, he turned his eyes up at the sky, just as PZT intense lightning blasted downward to where Emu was standing. A futile attempt. With a cold statement, Emu swiped his hand. Immediately after, the clear mass of water suddenly appeared out of thin water, before deflecting the lightning with ease. Bom Sakazuki, with a cold sweat, was shaking uncontrollably. He couldn't dare to turn around and face Emu, especially when the fear for Emu has already reached deep into his soul a long time ago. TSS then, although the lightning wasn't able to get through the water due to the water being completely pure, the heat evaporated it into steam that traveled upward. Emu didn't react to such a sight. Instead, an even greater mass of water was generated from the air moistured by the steam, before storming to Marco, who was nearing the fallen Garp with his utmost speed. Marco's expression darkened as he saw the huge tsunami that shadowed his form from quite a distance away. And it was approaching so quick as well he was going to be engulfed by it at this rate, along with Garp. What is this?" One member of the Revolutionary Army whispered in horror. With the swipe of hand, Emu generated a natural disaster like nothing. He couldn't help but wonder, is it really possible to win against that man? The whole Revolutionary Army stood frozen. "Heh, you gotta be kidding me." Sanji, who was sitting on the ground with dark bags under his eyes, laughed hollowly. "What is he, a god?" Zoro snorted. "What's there to be scary of, Arrowcook?" He turned and faced Luffy, who was kept at the back of the battlefield with his sea stone cuff still intact. "What matters is that Luffy is still alive, and that he can be saved." Zoro then said in a low tone, "But letting that Gramps die doesn't sound good either." "Grandfather of Captain Luffy." Bartolomeo screeched in shock, before running to Marco and Garp like a madman in an attempt to protect them from the tsunami. "Hold on. I'm coming there right now." However, he was too slow. Dragon gritted his teeth upon sighting the situation that they were within. Using his fruit ability, he quickly propelled himself to the huge tsunami that was falling down on Marco. On his open palm, the wind was rotating faster and faster, to an extent where they began to heat up into a dense mass of plasma. Heat. If I'm not wrong, Dragon's eyes narrowed. Heat is the key. Dragon's dragon, just before the tsunami was about to crash onto Marco, launched his attack, Roar. BOOM, the horrifyingly huge tsunami instantly evaporated into hot steam that floated up rapidly, saving Marco and Garp at the last moment. As I said, it's futile. Or so did Dragon think. Emu, all of a sudden, was standing next to Garp once again. with his hand gripping onto Marco by the neck. "I'm feeling powerless," Marco said weakly. "Out of my way." Boom then, everyone saw Tensei, who was fending off against Ace and Sabo until now, crashing onto the ruined Pangaea castle. Looking back at where he flew from, Ace was seen to have his fist outstretched. "Gramps!" Ace shouted with anger. "Don't you dare die on me. Got that?" Boom at some distance away. Mihawk stood stoically as Sengoku's powerful force blast impacted his sword, causing him to skid back. "Tsuru!" Sengoku cried urgently. "Go help Garp. Leave Hawk-Eye to me." "Sengoku." Tsuru's expression darkened. Sengoku was no longer as strong as he used to be in his prime. Against Mihawk, who is known to have gone on par against the now-deceased Red Hair Shanks, she knew that the chance of him winning was bleak. However, they were out of an option here. Tsuru, without any word, nodded before quickly dashing to Garp. Zoro, Sanji, and Bartolomeo too ran, trying to prevent Garp and Marco from dying. Ace and Sabo, with Tensei out of commission, jumped upward to Imu, with their eyes locked onto Marco in Imu's hands. "Marco the Phoenix." Imu muttered in a monotone as he gazed into the powerless Marco, disregarding what was going on around him. An ability to heal everyone with the special flame. "In this war, you are the key." Marco felt dread. He knew what was about to come, and he didn't have the power to prevent it. "Hep hops. Hope you left a spot for me." Therefore, he simply shifted his eyes to where Ace was seen at, and smiled. Crack without any hesitation, Imu crushed Marco's neck in one go. "Ah," Imu said in a monotone. "It seems that I killed him. How weak." Then, Ace saw Imu smiling wickedly at him, as if Marco's death was nothing but amusement for him. Bitch! Ace screamed as he went berserk. His eyes were bloodshot, and his whole body unconsciously hardened into its maximum capability. The Conqueror's haki boomed out of him, reflecting his rage. "Ace!" Sabo shouted in worry as he followed Ace from behind. Ace has completely lost his sense and began to charge in without any thought. This will result in his death. Sabo had to prevent that from happening. Imu, after killing Marco, turned his head around to face Dragon, whose haki-coated hand was now right in front of Imu's face. "Why? Did you lose your capability to think? Monkey D. Dragon," Imu said with a mockery as before Dragon's attack slammed onto his face. Before BOOM, a concentrated blast of water suddenly crashed down from the top, preventing Dragon's approach. Then came 9 Sword Style, Diable, Barrier, Zoro, Sanji, and Bartolomeo running in from Imu's back, Azura, /jam, /bulls, boom, but their attacks had no strength to harm Imu. The water that previously struck onto Dragon morphed into a wall, before hardening into a wall of pure sea stone. Right after, Imu tilted his head slightly, to see that a silent bullet has bypassed where his head previously lied. The attack was from Job, who was aiming his sniper at the former. Imu raised up his finger in response. Though Job immediately dashed away from his position upon seeing Imu's reaction, it was too late. Swoosh! A sharp needle of sea stone was found on Job's left arm, causing him to fall to the ground without any strength. Full metal, then. Ace came in flying from the top, with his fist crackling in Conqueror's haki. Infusion, Ogre Blitz. Imu raised his hand up with an even stronger Conqueror's haki. Infusion. Pazt Ace and Imu's will clashed in the middle. Their attacks didn't touch one another, but dominated the whole area with the Conqueror's haki, opening the sky above and revealing the full moon atop the starry night. But that wasn't the end. From the rubbles, Dragon stood back up and his whole body exploded into the potent Conqueror's haki. Dragon! Sakazuki's body boiled in a hot magma, but before he could attack Dragon, "I'm afraid that you can't do that." Sakazuki was pressed downward by Ishio's gravity. Ryusoken. Dragon's body crackled in the immense Conqueror's haki. Infusion. He slowly walked forth to Imu, who was still in a deadlock with Ace, just as the wind began to pick up around him. Sabo, who was pushed back due to Ace and Imu's clash, couldn't do much except raise his arms up to shield his face. Commander Dragon. Dragon's Pulse. BOM Emu effortlessly raised his free hand and met Dragon's incredible attack with the matching potency of Conqueror's Haki. Infusion. The whole area shook chaotically. One conqueror's will clashed against the two, and the weaker ones of the war began to drop unconscious one by one, for they were unable to handle this magnitude of Haki. A difficult task. Huff huff, but it is completed. And at this time, Tsuru utilized the chance to sneak in close to the site of the clash and lift up the powerless Garp and deceased Marco before dashing out of the area. Is this all that you are capable of? Emu. Even though he was against the powerful attacks of two renowned conquerors, Emu didn't even shed a single drop of sweat. On the other hand, as if having sensed a danger, the Pluton and Uranus levitated high up in the sky, rapidly moving out of the Mary Geoise as fast as they could. Kong, with pale face, was standing on top of Pluton. Having an idea of what Emu was about to do, he quickly made his way out of the ground, not even caring of the fact that he, the commander-in-chief of the world government, ran out of the battlefield. Subsequently, Emu's eyes gleamed wickedly. Just when Ace and Dragon's eyes widened in a disbelief, judgment. BOM the whole Mary Geoise was consumed by the bright explosion of Conqueror's Haki that abruptly expanded from Emu. The cloud of dust arose and covered the whole battlefield. Allies and enemies all alike were harmed by Emu's aimless strike. The painful cries and groans could be heard everywhere, if one had an intact sense of hearing. Swoosh, and even within this unviewable scenery, the sounds of water swarming could be heard. Emu indeed was a calamity, someone that none of the Revolutionary Army and their allies had the capability of defeating. Sakazuki, who was lying on the ground with injury on his back, chuckled hollowly as he saw the dead Marine soldiers nearby him. All of them were swept by Emu, who let out a horrifying burst of Haki simply because he was annoyed. Joy Boy, Tribe of D. Whatever it may be that you brought with you, Emu's emotionless voice, although not loud, resounded throughout the area. All is futile before me. Mankind cannot dare to oppose a god, and this truth is to remain the same forever. When the dust cleared, the scene was disastrous. Except for Sengoku and Mihawk, who withstood the damage to some extent, everyone has fallen onto the ground. The casualties were countless, and if one was to describe the sight, there would only be one answer for it: hell. Additionally, the previously ascended Pluton and Uranus descended back as well, floating behind Emu domineering. The Revolutionary Army and their allies felt dread. And you, the miserable weaklings, only had two choices: serve me or suffer a hopeless fate. And you chose the second option, unfortunately. Emu began his leisurely walk to where Luffy and Garp were lying. I am the sole conqueror of the world. I stand atop of all, governing and dictating the world as I see fit. I am the god whom no one is able to contend for, and for you who dared to oppose my will, there only exists doom. However, even when the situation was full of despair, not all hope was lost. From left and right, unyielding to Emu, Dragon, Ace, Sabo, Zoro, Sanji, Bartolomeo, Tsuru, the capable ones stood back up one by one. They were wounded quite severely, but the will in their eyes didn't die down. How idiotic. Emu commented. Isn't it easier to lay down and accept your fate? You miserable humans. The war was still far from over. Here we are, within the peculiar island, Lodestar. Rowan stared at the horizon full of fogs as he sat on top of the Prominence's wolf figurehead. After traveling all the way from Elbaf to Hakanosu, the Grimheart pirates utilized the Eternal Pose to reach the semi-final island of the Grand Line, Lodestar. Rowan, look. On Karina's wrist, all three needles of the log pose went haywire, spinning non-stop. A straightforward direction, the context said. Dan, who was sitting on top of Prominence's rail, chuckled as he gazed off to the front. But how do we determine which way is parallel to the calm belt, when the sea itself is covered by this inexplicable fog? Lodestar. It was a silent island. Apart from the fact that it was star-shaped, nothing existed. A barren island with a single poneglyph in the middle, that's all it was. So that's the one that Granny Sob read. Cavendish said with narrowed eyes. The beginning of the end. To the clueless adventurers who only became aware upon reaching this island, it would have meant the continuation of their journey. Whoever hid One Piece is pesky, really? Rowan spoke up, to which everyone listened. Once you reach what you considered the end of the sea, you find a necessity to start traveling backward for these road poneglyphs. Then, you come back hereafter, with the instruction to travel in a direction parallel to Calm Belt, up until the intersection between such path and Hakanosu's guide is found at noon. Reaching for his side, Rowan slowly lifted up his black captain's hat. At this point, you must be wondering, just what exactly is being hidden here? An unfathomable wealth? The weapon capable of ending the whole world? The strongest devil fruit to ever exist? With someone like Robin to interpret the ancient language, they sail with a dream, only to stop upon sighting this fog that reaches all the way to the sky high above. The fog. It was now clear to the Grimheart pirates. The voice of all things, I see. Alfred shook his head. I still don't have a clear idea of what it is, but it seems that it is a necessary tool to cross this fog. Rowan nodded as he stood up. His eyes were shadowed by the hat that he placed back on his head. But no need to worry. The so-called voice of all things hold no importance to us. Then, Rowan lifted his head up, revealing the ivory white-colored eyes, for I can see just fine. The product of the fact that he was reincarnated and his heritage of Vasilia, by the two of them mixing together, Rowan acquired these eyes that enhanced his observation hockey to a frightening degree. The voice of all things? There was no need for Rowan to listen. After all, he had the eyes of all things. I have one question, though, Captain. Then, Urich asked from his spot. What makes you so confident that we'll make it in time to Mary Geoise? Surely, there is no way that even Prominence will be able to carry us there in time. Rowan grinned knowingly as he rubbed the figurehead of the ship affectionately. Turning around to Urich, he said resolutely, you are about to find it out. Rowan made his steps to the middle of the deck. With creaking noises, Rowan stopped upon reaching the steering wheel of the ship.
Dan.
What time is it? Dan answered with a mix of curiosity and eagerness in his expression. 11:30 a.m. What are you about to do, Captain? Rowan tapped his foot onto the deck, to which Prominence responded with a ferocious roar. The ship transformed into a gigantic dragon once again. Floating in the sky above the lodestar, Prominence awaited Rowan's order. Karina smiled in a quick understanding. She closed her eyes and felt the breeze of the wind from the sea. It was a pleasant one, indeed. Hold on tight, Rowan said as his eyes blazed up brighter than ever. We are about to reach the final island of the sea, the mystical place where the One Piece lies. Then began. Swoosh. Prominence propelled itself forward faster than it ever has. At an incredible speed, it began to soar through the heavy mass of fog that blocked sight everywhere. Though Karina felt fear that nothing was viewable, that there was no way for them to identify just where they are, she and the rest of the crew decided to trust Rowan. What a sight that it was! A ferocious azure dragon traveling on the enigmatic fog that swirled upon the touch. It was a scene that Rowan only saw in the amazing artworks of the past world. I see it clearly. The fogs, which resulted in the deaths of many, wasn't able to provide any obstruction in front of Rowan's eyes. The fogs were viewable, but at the same time, invisible. It was the vast sea with the bright sun that greeted Rowan simultaneously. This is the road to the Laugh Tale, the final trial prior to the acquisition of the greatest treasure. This is something to be joyful of, isn't it? Rowan, being filled with excitement to brim, exclaimed to his crew. The Rio Poneglyph, it's near, Captain. Robin said in a shaky tone, I never expected that I would have been able to reach the truth of the world. After over 20 years of running, the greatest venture of all time, Dan commented jovially. Of course I'm full of excitement right now, Captain. Let me guess. Cavendish shouted as he held his sword up. One Piece is the legendary sword, meant for the hero who will save the princess from the Demon King. The whole crew exploded in joy as Prominence continued to pave its path through the dense fog. All of them, without a doubt, believe that Rowan will guide them to the final island. Can I request a song to the best diva in the world? Rowan asked Karina with a grin. Ah, what's with you all of a sudden? Karina laughed in amusement. Sure. What song would you like to hear? Rowan, Dan, and Cavendish looked at each other knowingly, before shouting in sync, Binks Sake. Carmen shook her head with a chuckle. Well, can't deny the fact that it's the best song of all. And what a jolly journey that it was. Though the speed was incredibly fast and the fly was short-lived, the happiness among the Grimheart pirates didn't die down. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Within the dense fogs where nothing could be seen, there existed no trace of nervousness in them. Now, after the 30 minutes long travel, the sun, in the middle of where Prominence was floating by, the sunlight shone through the fog. Oh, God of sun! Urij met his palms together in a praying fashion. I thank you for your guidance. Vroom at the same time. The whole sea below churned all of a sudden. It was a bizarre scene that no one was able to explain how it worked. Then, the Grimheart pirates eventually saw that below them, on the surface of the sea, a huge pit opened up. The sea parted apart by themselves. The huge mass of water dropped into the darkness like a waterfall, and the miraculous movement of water seemed to be inviting the Grimheart pirates to come. From here on, Rowan, with a smile, said to Dan, Don't forget to record every single detail, Dan. Of course, Captain. Dan replied as his sweaty grip on his pen tightened. This is a must. Laftale. Karina whispered in a realization. Is an island located underwater? With Rowan's tap, the Prominence instantly began its dive toward the pit bravely. Woo-hoo! Cavendish screamed in excitement as he held onto the rail of the Prominence. Arg! Get your hair off of me, you idiot! Carmen, whose face was being slapped by Cavendish's hair that wildly flew, barked. H.M. Alfred's eyes widened as the mesmerizing tunnel of water unfolded. No, to be more precise, it was a sea current? Dan's jaw dropped in a shock. I don't understand. The sea. It's running in a circle nonstop, providing this strange underwater tunnel. Just what the fuck, it was a miraculous scene. Through the leaves of the sunlight tree eve that spread throughout the entirety of the red line, the rapidly flowing bodies of water twinkled and sprinkled mischievously. The countless number of sea creatures, ranging from small fish to huge sharks, all swam and circled around this circulating current, as Prominence continued to fly through the gap. Due to having its speed boosted by the wind current that was generated by the movement of water, Prominence was flying even faster than it ever has. This direction? Karina's eyes widened in a realization. We're traveling vertically, perpendicular to the calm belts. Are we traveling below the red line? Across the whole world? Rowan nodded as he placed his right hand above his hat, preventing it from falling off from his head. The purple cape draped around him flapped wildly as Prominence continued its fly. Now, let's see what exactly One Piece is, shall we? In front of them lied one small island, surrounded by the rapid flow of water all around. Even without the bubble-like dome that Fishman Island needed, this island, Laugh Tale, somehow remained intact without touching the water. Here, on the island where only the Roger pirates managed to reach, the new visitors have arrived, and this was just before Emu revealed himself in the Mary Geoise. Chapter 188. A step onto the final island of the world. The ground, which hasn't been touched upon for years, has finally met someone pressing it from the above. Rowan. Laftale. That was the name of this island, given by Gold Roger. Looking around, Rowan found himself in amazement once more. The ever-flowing current of water that didn't pour onto the Laugh Tale. The overgrown plants and grass that somehow acquired the necessary nutrients for survival. And one cave, which lied at the opposite end of the island. Surely, that cave must be the place that concealed all truths. It feels weird, you know? Dan exclaimed. Are we really in the Laugh Tale? Just 4 years ago, I was stuck in that accursed Sixus, and never have I thought that I would end up becoming a pirate. Alfred added on, we never know what's going to happen in the future, do we, Monsieur Dan? One by one, The Grimheart pirates stepped on the grassy plain of Laugh Tale. Though it's deep in the water, it's as bright as a day, Carmen said as she shielded her eyes. Are we right next to the sunlight tree, Eve? Nay. Farrell began to run around the island in joy, to which a pebble followed. Farrell says, "This is amazing." Cavendish yelped in surprise. I, for a moment, forgot that Farrell existed. Upon Farrell turning his head around and glaring at Cavendish, Cavendish immediately shut his mouth comically, before laughing boisterously. Gwahaha. I was joking, Farrell. Why would you believe OW? You freaking horse. You dare to hit me, OW. Cavendish and Farrell engaged themselves in a childish fight, which everyone else ignored. From prominence, a childlike voice was heard. You always have been. Rowan replied pleasantly. Since the very beginning of our journey, you've been with us, haven't you? Facts, you mean. Karina smiled. Hee hee. Do you remember when you used to be called Lady Luck? It felt strange yet pleasant, as if their journey was finally coming to an end. What will my future be from here on? Rowan couldn't help but think, a peaceful life? An endless sail? I bet that many will come and pester me on left and right. Bohaha, a family of my own perhaps. They were walking toward the end, but also the beginning of something anew. Let's go. With Rowan in the front, the Grimheart pirates advanced to the cave. The path then narrowed, an irregular path that bent all of a sudden, or widened on some occasions. It was akin to a maze, though there was only one path for them to follow. We're descending. Just as Urich noted, the path was leading them to the depth. Even in the underwater island, there existed the lower section, which caused Rowan to crack a little. A small room isolated from the rest of the world. It was cold and lifeless. Unlike what Karina hoped for, there was no such thing as a megaton of wealth. Instead, there was one old table in the middle of the room, and on top of it lied a button. It had the words, "Do not press," written on it. Captain, Cavendish immediately whispered with twinkling eyes. Can I press that? Rowan's sweat dropped. Wait for a second, my guy. At the side, there was an intact skeleton that lifelessly lied in an open coffin. Why is the coffin open? Dan questioned with a frown. Karina pointed it out. There's no lid in the first place. One Piece. Robin spoke up with an interest all of a sudden. Is a skeletal remains of a deceased? Alfred turned to Robin questioningly. What the fuck, Mademoiselle Robin? On the other hand, Carmen stopped on the other side of the room. A map? It was the broadest map that they have ever come across, except that the map was unrecognizable. There was no red line. There were no calm belts. It was one whole sea without any noteworthy restriction. It was certainly different from the layout of the current world. This, Carmen, who noticed the map as well, couldn't help but drop her jaw in shock. All blue. Creek at some distance away, Rowan, who found that the table had a drawer under, pulled it open. There lied an old book full of dust. The title was, Binks Sake. Hey, Lob, one scrawny man with a straw hat whispered to a taller man on his side. Do you hear that? The two of them, along with more sailors, were standing on the deck of the gigantic, extremely gigantic ship that was traveling underwater, within the bubble-like coating. Binks Dono, it's Rob. How many times must I remind you? Yeah, Gob. The man with the straw hat, Binks, replied half-heartedly, for his attention was elsewhere. But seriously, don't you hear? Hear what? The sound of the heartbeat. It's coming from over there. Binks pointed in the particular direction, where the vast red line could be seen. The other man leaned toward the direction and placed his hand above his ear, trying to catch onto the sound, just as Binks claimed. However, it was to no avail. You must be hallucinating, Binks Dono. I hear nothing. What? Binks raised his eyebrow. You gotta be kidding me. Are you deaf, Wob? Whatever. Nishishishi. In a jovial demeanor, the crew of sailors finally reached their destination, the Fishman Island. Welcome, all of you. It's good to see you again, Binks. How have you been? Although the fishmen were wary of the group of humans, their king, Pontus, greeted them warmly. Nishishi, you are as big as ever, Ponty. Binks opened his arms wide and hugged Pontus, though the differences in their sizes made it seem quite comical. Anyway, I'm here to propose you something. Which is? Binks exclaimed with an excited grin. The Lunarians from up there, you guys, and all the others around the world. I'm going to host the grand party that involves all of us. Pontus's mouth opened in O-shape, finding himself dumbfounded by Binks' comment, Oh, I even made a song for that. Yo-ho-ho-ho, yo-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho. It's called Binks Sake. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Pontus laughed upon hearing that. You used my laugh as the lyrics. Why don't you name it Pontus's Sake instead? Hey, I'm the one who made the song. Binks immediately retorted. The others watched the hearty interaction between the two with sweat drops. Anyway, in order for all of you to arrive, I've prepared the ship over here. Binks raised his hand up and pointed at the huge ship that he and his crew used to reach the island. It's called Noah. I made it after getting permission from Adam, so it's really tough. We didn't accept yet. I'm busy right now, so we'll leave now. Remember, Ponty, the date of party is going to be a month after. Bring everyone. Got that? The entire Fishman race watched Binks and his crew's departure with confusion. Just like that, the Lunarians and the others from all around the world. Binks traveled throughout the whole sea, sending invites here and there. And now, the final location. Binks said jovially as he looked at the map, Let's go see Andre and his kingdom. Really? The man named Rob deadpanned. You are going to see your own enemies, whom you fought just a year ago? Nishishishi.
No worries, Nab.
Binks chuckled. And it's already been more than a month since you've come to join me. Man, you've been amusing as always. Oh, but I have one question for you. What is it, Binks Dono? You said that you've come from Wano, right? Your name was, Uchiha. It's Uchiha Rob, Binks Dono. I've come in place of Kazuki Dono, due to him being sick currently. PFFFFF, what kind of name is that? Binks's cheeks expanded as he tried to hold in his laughter. Please don't joke with other people's name, Binks Dono. Rob sighed, before turning his attention to where their next destination, Yggdrasil, lied. For some reason, his eyes held nostalgia in it. HM? Why are you sad? Binks's observation hockey specialized in reading the other's emotions. Rob's sorrow immediately reached him, and he couldn't help but ask. Nothing. It's nothing, Binks Dono. HM. Okay. So, Binks had to stop. As the island finally unveiled in front of them, there wasn't the sight of the great tree of Lilith that symbolized the kingdom. Instead, there lied a lifeless plain where the plebeians were living humbly. Where did it go? The entire kingdom disappeared. Binks cried in disbelief. Upon arriving at the island, they immediately began their search. Binks looked for the man named Vasilia Indra, the old king of Yggdrasil who lost against him a year ago. The other 20 kingdoms were just fine. So why here only? Binks, at this point, gained a suspicion of some sort. Something is going on from the back. Without any delay, they began their return to the great kingdom governed through democracy. The kingdom that was said to accept anyone who comes by. The kingdom that values freedom above all. The name of this kingdom was Dawn. It was supposed to be full of liveliness. It was supposed to be filled with people living their daily lives in joy. However, when Binks arrived, there existed nothing but ruins. Who did this? There, Rob saw it for the first time. Binks was more furious than he ever has. I'll go and check, Binks Dono. Without asking for permission, Rob shot out from the ship and ran into the ruins. Binks was too occupied with the sight in front of him to stop Rob's suspicious action. The other crew members stood behind Binks, frozen by the sight. After some time passed by, as everyone gathered around the bonfire in depression, so it reached here as well. Rob slowly closed his eyes while whispering, to which Binks heard. Immediately turning around, Binks grabbed Rob by the hem of his shirt. What do you mean by that, Rob? Rob let out a hollow laugh. You did memorize my name, after all. Turning his head to the sky above, he stated, 2 months ago, the man who claimed himself as a mortal arrived. He said that he has come from the past in order to prevent a disaster that will engulf the world. With the power that resembles a god himself, no one was able to oppose him. Yggdrasil, whom the other 19 kingdoms, except Alabasta, were wary of following after the loss against the Dawn, was betrayed. They served the mysterious man as the new king, and Yggdrasil was vanquished within a day, without any sound. After such, the man disappeared. To think he was planning to take down the Dawn. Binks let go of Rob, clenching his hands so tight that his arms shook. Binks growled, "Who are you?" Rob sighed. "I'm Vasilia Madura, the sole son of the final king of the Yggdrasil." "Why say this now?"
Because.
Rob made a weak smile. "I've finally finished all the tasks given to me. Even if I were to die, Vasilia will return one day, and Yggdrasil shall stand above all. The kingdom of Dawn, on the other hand, shall exist no more." At the same time, Rob's face held guilt. He knew that what he was doing was wrong, that he's returned Binks's kindness with betrayal. However, it was final wish of his father, Vasilia Indra. Swoosh, therefore, even as his head went flying up in the air, detached from his body, Rob didn't beg a single time. He accepted his death. How petty, how selfish. Was your pride greater than the lives of the thousands? If you told me ages ago, many lives would have been saved. You, the family of Vasilia? Binks gritted his teeth. You never changed after all. Thud as Rob's headless body fell down. Binks turned to the remaining members and ordered, "We'll have no choice but to postpone the party." He placed his hand on his forehead in a distress, but continued, "Send the poneglyphs to everyone. To each of you, I'll leave one." "What about you, Binks?" "I'm going to track down the mysterious man. Those 20 kingdoms, they were acting when we arrived." Binks slammed his fist on the ground, unable to contain his anger. He turned his back, about to leave, however. Binks. Hold on for a second." Binks stopped upon hearing a familiar voice. "Dell, you were still alive," Binks said in a shaky voice. "Listen, I've got the letter from the kingdom of Alabasta." "What?" Binks immediately took the letter from the man named Dell and opened it. Man's name is Emu, controls the sea. Next target is Lunarians? Binks's eyes widened as he immediately crumbled up the paper.
Boris.
"I would need you to carry an additional poneglyph for me to Alabasta." Having understood the situation, Binks ordered, "And Dell, I need you to come with me." Without further ado, Binks, along with Dell, rode on a boat and began his rapid travel to the top of the Red Line. He had to arrive as fast as he could before the Lunarians suffered the same fate as them. Just where did it go wrong? Just a month ago, Binks was sailing across the world, inviting everyone to the most exciting party of all time. Yet, the situation now was more detrimental than ever. Emu, that man, who appeared out of nowhere, was the source of the misery. Binks instinctively knew that he was the only one able to defeat the former. And finally reaching the top of the Red Line, instead of the lunar kingdom that should have greeted him just as ever, there instead lied a huge castle that he didn't recognize. The Lunarians? Binks's expression darkened. "I'm sorry. I was late." His arm began to expand. Not knowing when to stop, it continued to grow until the fist was as huge as the castle. "But this will be the end. No more will suffer. Indeed, this is where everyone ends once and for all." A cold voice interrupted Binks all of a sudden. Binks knew, without a doubt, that this man was Emu. BOM thus began the battle greater than any other, though it was Binks alone against the entire army. The title of Sun God wasn't for a show. Binks's limbs stretched and blasted away everything nearby. His haki was strong enough to cause the whole atmosphere to tremble. However, it felt short against Emu. What was the cause of his loss? His confidence? His lack of strength? Binks didn't know, for it was the first time he ever lost in a battle. Bobump then Binks realized. The sound that he heard in the beginning, within the Red Line, was Emu's heartbeat. Op fruit. On the place where Emu's heart was supposed to exist, there was nothing but a hole. Binks only realized this after his arm went through the gaping hole, while Emu's hand was penetrating through his heart. "Why you?" hid your own heart within the red line. You said that you came from the past, through the combination of op fruit and the user of time fruit. You hid your own heart in the future, Binks whispered in a realization. And that's why you came here, to prevent me from destroying it. It wasn't only the immortal surgery that Emu got. It was far more complex than just that, and by the time Binks found this out, it was too late. So you've figured out, Emu said coldly, but the dead man tells no tales. Binks, at the final moment of his life, shifted his eyes elsewhere, where Dell was hiding. I've leave the rest to you. Thud, the world government's reign on top of the red line has begun. It was the symbol that they were the summit of the world. The kingdoms that supported Emu have wiped out every member of Dawn and Vasilia, due to the fear that they felt and due to Emu's order. Yo-ho-ho-ho, yo-ho-ho-ho. At the solitary island underwater, one old man said weakly, "It's a good song, Binks." The man slowly placed himself within the coffin and lied down peacefully. If only I was as strong as you were, I would have blasted away the red line immediately. But even if I were to do so, defeating Emu is impossible, a pity. Nonetheless, I believe, someday, you will return and light up the world once again. The party that was postponed indefinitely will finally start then. Though we've lost, the hope isn't lost. The will of Dawn never dies. Binks always said, "Let's blow up the whole red line." Rowan spoke slowly as he read through the journal in his hands. Let's connect all seas, whether the underwater, the Grand Line, the calm belts, the four seas, or the White Sea above. Then, as everyone gathers up together and join the most grand party out of all, I will activate this once again and showcase the coolest waterwork ever, with a grand view, with all chefs cooking the best dishes possible. Let's then sing Binks's sake all together. Rowan, having reached the end of the page, placed it down slowly. Then, bo-ha-ha-ha-ha. Ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Everyone except Robin burst on laughter. One Piece wasn't the skeletal remains of a deceased. Robin whispered as if shocked by the fact. Dan muttered in a disbelief. He created a bomb. In order to blow up the whole red line? A bomb is the One Piece. What the? Cavendish whispered with sparkling eyes. That's actually incredible. One Piece is a party tool? Rowan couldn't hold it in. A bomb capable of destroying the whole red line is made for a party? Well, it wasn't a nuke at the very least. So, if it's a waterwork, Karina said with narrowed eyes, the moment that button is pressed, kaboom. Cavendish exclaimed with a grin. The Fishman Island, red line, Mary Geoise, everything will be blown up in one go. Gwahaha, now that's what we call S-P-A-C-B-U-C-A-L-E-R, spectacular. Urich turned to Cavendish with an evident confusion. I don't think that's right. Carmen raised her hand up in a cold sweat, thinking of the truth that was unveiled just now. Then what about us? Who are the closest to this weapon? We'd have to endure it. Rowan, after replying to Carmen, turned to Alfred and Urich. You two remember how to coat the ship? The two of them immediately understood what Rowan was trying to get across. With confident nods, they turned around, about to return to the surface and get prominence coated. Many things have been unveiled. In conclusion, Vasilia was trash. Binks's sake was the song made by Joy Boy himself. The name of the great kingdom was Dawn, to which Rowan speculated to be what D within the names meant. One Piece was a giant water bomb capable of destroying the whole red line. This is too much. Dan scratched the back of his head while jotting down the details on the journal. Then, Tapia? Karina exclaimed with widened eyes as Farrell's pebble landed on top of the button. Nay! Farrell cried in horror as he immediately retracted the soul out of the pebble. However, it was too late. Farrell! Cavendish screamed with snot dripping down from his nose, and his jaw opened wide. Alfred and Urich froze on the spot. Ufufu, are we all going to die here? Robin smiled. What the fuck? Carmen cursed in a pale face. Dan cried in panic. No. The journal is going to get wet. Rowan gazed at the scene with a dumbfounded expression. before letting out a chuckle. Well, shit boom, a huge burst of water enveloped all. Chapter 189. I already stated, and will do so again. Though Mary Geoise was filled with many noteworthy individuals, a silence enveloped the whole area. In the middle, Emu stood without an intact attire. No one, for the past hours, was able to touch him even once. All that you're doing is futile. No matter how solid your plan may be, how strong you may be, all is naught but a baseless complacency before me. Dragon turned to Garp and grimaced. It was a miracle that the latter was still alive, but he knew there wasn't much time left. Then Luffy. He was cuffed by the sea stone cuff, created by Emu himself. No one among them had a way to free Luffy from it. Marco, who died, was lying on the ground with pale face. The Phoenix pirates retaliated against Emu with fury and sorrow, but it was to no avail. From the bottom of the Red Line, on the Sea of Paradise, Law bickered. What did you expect, you morons? Interestingly, on the spot where Law's eyes were supposed to be at, there only existed empty holes. Law, using his own ability, separated his eyes from his body and floated up high in the air using tact, one of the abilities granted to him within his room. This allowed him to spectate the war at the Mary Geoise. Did you really believe that you'll be able to defeat that man by yourselves? It was still vivid. The day where Kaido and Big Mom has fallen, by one young man. There is only one man who stands a chance against that abomination. That's why Law remained down. Garp? That man has already proven his superiority over Garp during the Marineford War. Dragon? Dragon was wary of the two emperors, not having the power to end their tyranny, unlike that man. Therefore, I will wait. Vav was a pirate. He and his crew's lives were more important than anything else. Splash then, a huge ship, greater than any other that Law saw before, revealed itself all of a sudden.
Wow.
So this is the above, where the humans live. It's pretty dark though. A huge mermaid princess, Shirahoshi, said jovially, before grabbing her neck. But father, I can't breathe. Splash, splash one by one. The fishmen dived into the water, unable to breathe on the air outside. Law's eyes narrowed. They are. From the New World, Nojiko stared up high to the foggy Red Line, intrigued by what was going on. That freaking Trafalgar. How dare he leave us here like this? Bonnie shouted in annoyance. The Heart Pirates' high-tech submarine was superior in terms of speed, and the Twin Cats Pirates and Bonnie Pirates arrived just now, only to see that Law was gone from the site. Question is, Nami placed her hand on her chin. Did he go up or down? Due to the Red Line, they were unaware that Law bypassed the Red Line and arrived on the Paradise, in order to send Sengoku and Tsuru into the Pangea Castle way above. No point thinking about it, Nojiko stated seriously, before pointing at the huge hole in the Red Line. Someone already paved the path in front of us. Let's climb up. What? One of the Twin Cats pirates whined. But we're the pirates. Climb up? We aren't the mountain bandits. Shut up. Nojiko barked back comically, causing that member to freeze and force a smile. Yes, Captain. Unknown to those below the Red Line, they were already within Emu's sight. How ignorant. Emu, in the past, defeated Binks by the extraordinary control over his fruit ability. Now, around 800 years passed by. His haki, especially the observation haki, has now reached a level where no one was able to compete against. He could see it all. The Heart Pirates and the Fishman race at the Paradise. The Twin Cats Pirates and Bonnie Pirates at the New World, about to enter the hole that Morley previously drilled. But, watching the bugs struggle for their lives, surely provides some entertainment. Emu decided to leave them at it is for now. He had all time in the world, or so he believed. Pluton and Uranus. Though they momentarily stopped their operation upon Emu's silent order, both of them were still intact and ready to wipe out the enemies. Additionally, the pacifistas. Though many of them were impaired by the enemies, quite a few of them remained still. This war, without a doubt, was tilting in favor of the world government. Emu remembered his conversation with the genius scientist before the war. A death. Dr. Vegapunk was long since gone. After the modification of Kuma into a full-blown cyborg, Dr. Vegapunk lost his ability to speak. A pointless thought. Emu discarded the memory without any care, for the dead man no longer had any significance on him. Boom! Just then, a burly man with afro hair, Sengoku, was seen high above at the sky, with a deep cut on his abdomen. With the blood soaking his ripped top, Sengoku crashed onto the ground, unconscious. Sengoku, Tsuru whispered with a cold sweat. You've grown old, Sengoku, Mihawk stated coldly, with his sword, Yoru, still clenched tight in his right hand. This is all that a former fleet admiral amounts to? What now? Sanji, who was lying on the ground, said in a weak voice, Oi, Marimo, say something. Beat the hell out of that water guy. Zoro replied immediately, though his whole body was under an extreme stress, and kill him. When he dies, the sea stone cuff on Luffy will disappear, right? Emu heard Zoro. Though his facial expression remained the same, the corner of his right eye twitched slightly, implying his annoyance. How persistent. The water has burst into the existence around Emu. They swirled up to one sharp spike, before its tip turned into a dark purple in color, due to Emu's use of armament haki emission. You can do that? It was the incredible sight. The shapeless water, being mixed with the perfect control of armament haki. Sabo couldn't help but chuckle hollowly. Just what kind of monster are we against? A disgusting filth. That's what it is. Ace growled as he stood up once again. His whole body was full of wounds, and the blood was dripping out of them without a stop. If he were not to get a medical attention soon, he will die without a doubt. Yet, he didn't stop. With the intense conqueror's haki crackling around him, Ace began to approach Emu. Emu, the one with the power of water. But in essence, at the same time, Dragon 2 stood up. His left arm was missing, and his left eye was closed, permanently blinded. However, his will didn't cease to burn. You are the embodiment of the moon. The moon gives a rise to the tidal waves. You came to this world to take over the world governed by the sun. Emu's spike of water, which was slowly approaching to Zoro, stopped upon hearing Dragon's words. Do you wish to become the sun yourself, fake king? Dragon's words seemed to have affected Emu to some extent. It's been 800 years since I heard that statement. How nostalgic. One spike of water then branched into two. One continued to head for Zoro, and the other was soaring to Dragon rapidly. The water then plummeted down to the ground. It was due to Ishio, who operated his ability even though he was extremely tired. Does it change anything? However, the water didn't stop. Even though it was crushed on the ground, it continued to flow slowly to its praise. Meteor. At the same time, Sakazuki, who was standing at some distance away, shot the multiple clusters of magma to the immobilized Revolutionary Army. Volcano. Inazuma. Dragon, upon facing the detrimental situation, said to one executive of the Revolutionary Army, Inazuma, in a low tone, get others ready to brace for the impact. Roger that. An intense storm, more intense than it has ever been, came into life. Engulfing Dragon within seconds, the storm began to grow more and more. As the shrewd stream of water and clusters of magma reached Dragon, the storm expanded all of a sudden. Without harming anyone at the back, the storm shredded the water and magma instantly. Mixing the two together, and along with the cold gust of air, the water froze into ice, and the magma rapidly cooled down to solid rocks. Yet, Emu didn't exhibit any surprise. The awakened ability of Logia allows one to morph the climate itself. The cloud rapidly gathered at the sky above the Mary Geoise. It swirled and thickened, until nothing but the darkness existed. The cold and ferocious wind invaded the Mary Geoise. Many shivered, nervous of what was about to come at any second. At the same time, the storm enlarged even further. Its border was now right in front of Emu, and if Emu wasn't to move, he would soon be engulfed by the storm as well. I have been waiting for this day. The day where the dawn will rise again. The day where everyone will see the bright light, waking up the world from its slumber. The end is near. Yes, the end is near. Emu replied impassively. But whose end is it? Yours. With dragon's growl, Pazt the lightning broke out from the terrifying cloud above. It struck onto Emu, though he stood on his spot and endured without any problem. Pazt it struck once again, but yielded the same result.
Ugh.
Sakazuki had to shield his face, covering his entire body with armament haki and supporting his body with the dense mass of magma. Sakazuki wasn't in a condition to think about launching a counterattack. Kong grimaced and slammed his legs onto the ground. He too had no choice but to endure. Dragon's strength was evidently above his own. Mihawk, on the other hand, embedded his sword onto the ground. Unlike the previous two, Mihawk was handling Dragon's attack quite well. The end of the endless. In this state, Dragon slowly placed his right hand out and got into a particular stance. The return of the king. Emu watched Dragon on the ground with his hands at his back. And the will of the dawn. The wind cries in sorrow. The wind screeched in pain. However, the torture is now over, for there only remains the light. Dragon then pushed his hand forth. Ryusoken, Dragon's ascend. Boom! The incredible storm blasted the whole Mary Geoise in one go. It was so ferocious that some world government agents flew up to the sky powerlessly, where the streams of lightning struck down and ended their lives. Dragon's technique was powerful enough for even Mihawk to skid back. Sakazuki instantly created a huge wall of magma in an attempt to block off the attack, but it was instantly grinded into the fine dusts. I acknowledge you, Monkey D. Dragon. Then, Emu spoke up within the storm, in a calm voice. Perhaps I've slightly underestimated. You've given me more entertainment than I initially expected. Tap one step. Emu took one step forward within the mighty storm. Normally, the sound should have been muffled out by the noises generated by the storm. However, everyone, for some reason, heard Emu's step loud and clear. Swoosh! Mihawk, upon hearing another noise up in the sky, beyond the thick layer of cloud, looked up. Sob, who was staying back with injured Job and Mob, widened her eyes as she too heard it. It was unclear as to what the source of this sound may be, but it was coming from right above them. The rebellion from the Cocoyasi. Sob stated in a shaky tone. Isn't just one? Just when she said so, two gigantic poles of sea stones poked through the cloud, dispelling it in one go. The whole revolutionary army saw this unbelievable sight with widened eyes. They felt their strengths leaving their bodies in despair. Dragon gritted his teeth. He had no choices. The storm that engulfed the enemies soared upward and crashed against the descending poles. Isho, with darkened expression, raised his hand up, trying to control the gravity to slow down the sea stone poles. Let me help you as well. Mob, who was in a monotone, stepped up. He raised his hands up in a similar fashion to Isho. Vroom! The chunks of earth began to levitate from the ground that they belonged to, before slamming onto the descending sea stone poles. Did we make it in time? Just then, Nojiko, who managed to make her way up fast along with her crew and the Bonnie pirates, stated with her eyes locked up high to the sea stone poles. Nojiko.
Nami.
Dr. Nako, who was treating injured Job, exclaimed in surprise, How did you get here? Let's save the talk for now, Dr. Nako. Nojiko stated as her arms glowed in a mystical green. One by one, the dead corpses began to stand back up with the greenish hues on their hollow eyes, before walking to where the poles were falling. What kind of ability is this? Ivankov, who was still struggling against the senseless Kuma, shouted in a cold sweat. Let me help as well. Bartolomeo, whose eyes were half-lidded from exhaustion, said firmly as he manipulated the rectangular barrier to support the mob's chunks of earth from the back. Tisish, just what is going on here? Bonnie cried as she shot multiple rounds of seeds, which quickly grew into the huge trees that attached themselves to mob's chunks of earth. Don't. Huff, forget about me. Vivi's Sand too joined the resistance, pushing against the sea stone poles as much as she could. It isn't going to be enough? From the cage behind the ones in Cocoyasi, Kurubi said grimly. I'm going, Kurubi. Hatchin, with determined voice, stated. Kurubi's eyes widened, for Hatchin's cage was undone. Since when? Ignoring Kurubi's question, Hatchin walked out of the cage and held his hand out to Kurubi. Are you coming with me, Kuro? Kurubi saw a genuine smile on Hatchin and found his face morphing in a similar fashion. Of course, Hachi. Creak. Everyone faced the two sea stone poles that slowly descended to them. With everyone's efforts, one sea stone pole has successfully skidded sideways and tilted away from its trajectory path. However, another one continued to fall toward them, to those from the Cocoyasi. Heh, if we were to die here, Dr. Nako grinned without any fear. Let's go with a smile. Everyone. Nojiko screamed in panic, even as her face paled up from the excessive use of her ability. Vroom, the tip of the gigantic pole was approaching them fast. Even under the countless corpses, barriers, earth chunks, weakened gravity, and many other factors slowing it down, their eventual deaths seemed impossible to prevent. Dragon, who was on one knee, raised his trembling arms up, trying to operate the wind one more time. However, it was prevented by Sakazuki, who was rapidly flying to Dragon, in an attempt to end the latter's life once and for all. Bomsebo grabbed the immobilized dragon and avoided Sakazuki's attack at the last second. Subsequently, Fishman Karate, Tranquil River, Splash, a huge mass of water that was brought into existence by Emu, swirled into one and pushed onto the ones of the Cocoyasi who were awaiting their deaths. They were sent out of the area of impact at the final moment. Within their eyes, two fishmen entered their sight. Kurubi? Hatchin? Nojiko found her eyes wavering as the two of them stood below the sea stone pole with smiles. We're sorry for all that we've done in the past, Kurubi said with a weak smile. We're not trying to ask you for forgiveness, Hatchin said genuinely. We're doing this for our sake, out of our selfish minds. It's just us paying for our wrongdoings. Boom. That was the final sight of the two before the pole impaled through the ground of the Mary Geoise. We are alive. One member of the Cocoyasi Revolutionary Army muttered, we were saved by them, the ones who killed our families. A complex emotion invaded their minds. How amusing. Emu, from afar, watched with his eyes gleaming enigmatically. So you managed to handle the two. Well done. However, what about four then? Then revealed, four sea stone poles that suddenly appeared from the sky. Ha, ha ha ha, is he a god or what? Vivi said in a resigned voice. She sat down on the ground, having no strength to continue further. Isn't this too much, even for a devil fruit? They spent all their strengths just to defend the past two strikes. Now, there were four of them. It was the end. Vroom, in the battlefield where their will was slowly dying into a despair. Not even a ground for them to be buried within will be granted, it seemed. After all, Vroom, the ground began to shake. No, the whole Mary Geoise was shaking. No, that's not it. Dragon, who was held by Sabo, whispered weakly, the whole red line is shaking. Vroom, the whole red line began to crumble down. Ah! Within this sudden quake, a distant cry was heard in everyone's ears. Ah! From down below. The sea stone poles were descending without a stop. However, at the same time, the whole Mary Geoise was tilted all of a sudden, about to fall off at any moment. Boom! HHHH then appeared. One man holding his soaked captain's hat, floating his up in the sky. On his waist, many ropes were tightened around, and those ropes were connected to the 8 other powerless individuals and a huge ship. One of the roped ones, Cavendish, was seen to be screaming in horror. That man was recognizable in everyone's eyes. The man who stood atop all the pirates. The man having rumored to travel rapidly from an island to island, seeking for the greatest treasure of the world, One Piece. He was standing above all of them at the current moment. Oh, One, what the hell are you doing there? Nami cried in shock while falling. Splash, splash, one by one. The chunks fell into the water. The Mary Geoise too broke into pieces and disappeared one by one. Eventually, the red line was no more. Rowan, Shirahoshi shouted in a joy. On the bottom, the Sea Kings who were on the standby caught the falling allies before they fell into the water. Hey, Shirahoshi, good to see you. Rowan, on the other hand, noticed the 4 sea stone poles above him after greeting Shirahoshi. Sea stone, I see. He clenched his right hand, where the extremely potent conqueror's haki manifestation burst into its existence. Then, without any hesitation, he threw it forward. And within everyone's sight, the sea stone poles were sent blasting back into where it came from, before completely disappearing from their view. Blew the 8 others who were attached to the ropes with Rowan, then vomited a huge amount of water, generating rainbows. The scene was so abrupt and so comical that it seemed to be out of the world. Promi, I'm cutting the ropes now, all right? Upon the rope being cut, the silent ship suddenly transformed into a roaring azure dragon and allowed all members of the Grimheart pirates to safely land on its deck. Well, that was... Karina muttered with a blush while wiping her mouth, slightly embarrassing. You've finally come. Law grinned with an evident relief in his expression. Splash Law, you pesky coward. So this is where you were hiding. Bonnie, who just landed close by, immediately shouted upon seeing Law, to which Law replied with a middle finger of his own. Ha! Emu, on the other hand, placed his hand on his forehead, finding himself at the loss of words. In front of him lied his own heart, Bob-Bump, which was beating within the tightly sealed sphere of sea stone. Vasilia, the first whom I defeated after my arrival to the future. They were the weaklings who believed in the supposed superiority of their lowly strengths and lived with arrogance. Where did an anomaly like you come from, Grimheart? The heart now lied in Emu's hands. With a well-hidden fury, Emu slowly placed his heart back to where it belonged. He was back into the hole after the countless years. And now, Emu found his eyes sharpening at Rowan. So we finally meet, Emu. Chapter 190. Isn't it beautiful? In the middle of the vast sea, Kazan took out a bottle of alcohol from his backpack and took a sip of it. The night was over, and the sun was slowly revealing its body. However, Kazan's surrounding wasn't as peaceful as he seemed to be. Around him, there existed nothing but cold ice. They were the frozen remains of what used to be the Grand Tesoro. What do you think, Aramaki? Kazan turned around to his right and asked, where one frozen figure of a man was found. Aramaki or Admiral Ryakuju? Of course, Aramaki wasn't able to answer Kazan's question, for he was dead. Wonder why Sakazuki made you an admiral? Aramaki, by himself, may have stood a better chance against Kazan than with Tesoro. The ability to maneuver gold served as nothing but a hindrance for the ability of forest fruit, granting Kazan an unexpected advantage. A thoughtless charge-in like a bull. Though the title of Ryakuju surely fits you, the title of Admiral doesn't. Perhaps, he thought, this is why the Marine was reduced to this state now. Kazan, finding that not much was left in the bottle, gulped down the whole thing. Virum. The noise. It was music in Kazan's ears. It was the sound of the whole red line crumbling down, and he knew that the world was about to enter a new era. Kazan smiled. Grabbing the bike that he left at the edge of Grand Tesoro, Kazan leisurely began another chapter of his journey. All blue. Sanji whispered in a wonder. Turning his body around from atop the back of one Sea King, Sanji placed his hand into the water. So this is what it really meant. He looked up and saw the middle of the sea, where the 2 men, Rowan and Emu, were facing one another. Below them, there lied a huge pit that the Grimheart pirates came from. The surrounding water was pouring down to the pit, filling up the pit rapidly. Bartolomeo unconsciously gulped. His fists were tightened in anticipation, and out of all the anger that has been built up within him for days, he shouted, "Beat the hell out of that guy, Rowan." Rowan chuckled upon hearing Bartolomeo. Emu's eyes gleamed murderously. He raised his hand up with the intention to impale Bartolomeo in one go. Splash! The sea around Bartolomeo churned, before the huge spikes of water burst out from all sides akin to the soaring dragons. Then, boom, all the spikes exploded into a harmless rain without harming Bartolomeo. Emu's eyes twitched as he turned his attention back to Rowan. Rowan locked his eyes onto Emu with an adamant determination. Boom! He walked on top of the air as if walking on solid ground, and slowly approached Emu. From atop the sky, Mihawk, Kong, Sakazuki, and many others stood on top of the sky creature's back. Sakazuki muttered in a disbelief, "Grimheart, you fought me less than a year ago, and now you've already grown strong enough to contend against that monster. How?" Mihawk slowly raised his sword up, knowing what was about to come. His eyes were headed to one of the newly arrived Grimheart pirates, Karina in particular. Then he slashed. It was an awe-inspiring view, as his simple swing generated a huge wave of pressured air that flew to the prominence. Zoro witnessed this sight with anger. There still exists so much gap between him and me, damn it. In contrast to Zoro, Karina watched the approaching attack without any impression. Hawkeye is mine. Cavendish, who was a swordsman himself, wanted to refute against Karina's decision. But eventually, he ended up slouching, knowing from the operation of his observation haki that Mihawk was beyond what he was capable of handling. Subsequently, Zoom Prominence itself was teleported away from where Mihawk's attack was heading to, causing it to impact the empty sea. Meanwhile, Dan, who transformed his body into the lightning, immediately traveled to where Luffy and Garp were lying. "He's still alive," Dan said as he made a quick inspection of Garp. Subsequently, looking around, he realized that many required medical attention. "Law," Dan called out. Law replied in a gruff manner, "I know." Boom! Just then, at some distance away, Weevil dropped down from the sky and landed on top of one of the sky creatures, only for them to plummet without control, due to Weevil simply being too heavy.
Splash, ee.
"I still didn't wipe them out." Weevil then swam out of the sea and gripped onto the edge of one Sea King, where the Phoenix pirates were resting upon. Miss Backens, who would have said, "No, that's enough vengeance. Now that Marco the Phoenix is dead, we should capture the rest and learn where they hid your father's treasure," wasn't present. Perhaps she was crushed under the ruined parts of Red Line. Weevil, Vista, who was found without a left leg, muttered as his face was in a frown due to pain. The entire Phoenix pirates had no strength to fight, and they could do nothing but watch as Weevil make his way up from the sea. Then, nay! One horse triumphantly cried as he landed in front of Weevil daringly.
HHW.
Weevil exclaimed in surprise. "You are," Jozu said with half-lidded eyes. "Feral, what are you planning to?" Jozu had to stop. Feral's entire body then turned black as he utilized armament haki, hardening to his maximum capability. A horse with the ability to use haki. It was something that no one thought to be possible. "How have you been, Feral?" Bonnie landed on the same Sea King, causing it to cry due to the increasing weight for him to support. "Seems like you need some help." Unfortunately for the Sea King, Bonnie wasn't the end. If his strength truly is equivalent to Whitebeard in his prime, "You are going to need some more help," Robin said calmly as she too landed next to Feral. "Nay." Cavendish smiled upon seeing Feral's fearless action. They surely have come a long way, and his partner for life was now going against the warlord without any fear. He felt himself being filled with a positive emotion. Taking his eyes off the scene, Cavendish unsheathed his sword and pointed at Kong, who was standing on top of one sky creature with narrowed eyes. "If I were not to fight the strongest swordsman of the world, then the commander-in-chief of the world government shall suffice." Heh. Karina grinned as she flipped her dagger. "You better win, Cave." Just as Karina said so, she and Cavendish disappeared from the prominence at the same time. Clang Karina was in front of Mihawk, holding her daggers against him. Bom Cavendish held his sword, Durandal, with two hands, where the tip of it was pushing against Kong's haki-imbued fist. "How wonderful!" Sakazuki snarled in sarcasm as he looked at the prominence, where Carmen, Alfred, and Urage were gazing back at him. Upon his will, the magma began to bubble around him and flow downward. Kai-e, the poor sky creature that he was standing on top of, melted in a horrifying way. With the advanced utilization of Jeppo, Sakazuki, whose whole body was emanating hot magma at this point, floated on top of the sky, just as the three members of the Grimheart Pirates watched the corpse of the poor sky creature dropping into the water. "That was unnecessary," Carmen commented. Alfred adjusted his monocle, as his arms began to grow dark blue furs. Slowly, but surely, his appearance was changing into a more regal way. Sakazuki waited with veins popped out of his forehead. This war provided him nothing but a sense of humiliation and embarrassment. Disregarding his so-called absolute justice, Sakazuki only had one thought: to end the Grimheart pirates in the most gruesome way possible, out of his anger alone. And among the three, it was Urich who initiated the attack. Having his huge fist coated by the armament haki emission, he propelled to Sakazuki with a grin on his face. BOM upon the clash, the magma splattered in all directions. Swoosh just then. Alfred moved at a blurry speed and parried all magma away from the endangered sites, preventing any further casualties from arising. Uranus, or the lifeless Lunarian prince, then flinched, just as the sky creatures cried simultaneously. With the intentions to harm the fallen ones on the sea, they dove, only to be prevented from achieving their goals by the sea kings that revealed themselves from the water. Why you can't harm them? Shirahoshi, though shaking in nervousness, said firmly as she glared at Uranus that silently floated atop the sky. From her side, King Neptune took out his trident warily. Among the exhausted rebels, the ones who had some strengths left within them stood back up from the back of the Sea Kings. We still have an unfinished business to deal with, don't we? One of them was Ivankov, who growled with his fists clenched tight as the shadow loomed over him. Kuma didn't respond. Instead, his jaw opened and a bright light was seen from within his mouth, about to shoot a beam of laser at Ivankov. Fishman karate, then. A shout was heard, arabesque brick fist. Boom! Kuma's head was turned sideways at the last moment, before the laser beam was shot to the empty sky. You are? Ivankov turned around and saw Jinbi, the Knight of the Sea. We're here to help, Jinbi said firmly as he landed next to Ivankov. Let us talk later after the war is over, shall we? Ivankov, who took a moment to calm his breath, nodded as he found a grin forming on his face. Phew, agreed. Subsequently, the huge Pluton II restarted its movement. Descending down from the sky slowly, it pointed its huge drill downward with the intention to crush all who lied beneath. Yet, it was prevented from doing so. Boom! Prominence, which lied in the sky nearby, began its act. Without anyone controlling the ship, it roared in its dragon form before blasting an intense ray of flame, which pushed Pluton away temporarily. Boom! Then, upon Prominence slamming its head onto Pluton's side, the battle between the two strongest ships started. As all these events happened simultaneously, Rowan and Emu kept their eyes locked on one another. There was no talk, for it wasn't required for them to know that a battle was incoming. Then, a sheer pressure of Conqueror's haki burst out from Emu, attempting to crush the whole area into his domineering will. The whole sea was agitated in a chaotic fashion. Many clang onto the back of the Sea Kings, trying to prevent themselves from falling into the sea. Rowan simply watched Emu's utilization of Conqueror's haki before he too mirrored Emu's action with his own will. PAZT, an intense black lightning crackled into existence as two incredible wills clashed in the middle. The air trembled in fear. The clouds ran away from the sight, afraid that they will be caught by this calamity. The wild sea suddenly calmed down, worried that it may annoy the conquerors of the sea. Just what is? Sabo couldn't help but mutter in a shock as he shielded his face. It wasn't like anything that everyone has ever seen. Not even the four emperors. Not even the admirals. No one, absolutely no one, has achieved this magnitude of disaster with haki alone. Not even Rox D. Zebek and Gol D. Roger. Emu found his face wrinkling up into a frown. The thought of having someone of equal strength as him, the sole king of the world, brought nothing but a sense of displeasure to his mind. Emu slowly held his hand out. In correspondence, the huge pit of waterfall below the two of them suddenly began to swirl. The huge whirlpool, so huge that the Sea Kings began to swim vigorously to escape from being sucked in by it, was generated from Emu's gesture alone.
Ashuri.
Get out of here. Everyone, regardless of allies or enemies, realized that they will be caught in a crossfire if they were to continue to stay nearby the two. Whether by swimming or flying, Everyone quickly dispersed to the area far away from Rowan and Emu, and all battles momentarily halted for this sake. Everyone, move onto this island. Nami, who was standing on top of the island of Yggdrasil that contained the breeze tree Lilith, shouted. No need, Law said before opening his palm. Room, shambles. In an instant, all immobilized ones were teleported on top of the island. With the weights gone from their backs, the Sea Kings managed to escape the sudden whirlpool safely. Then, Emu clenched his hand. Boom with a noise, Rowan found himself surrounded by huge bodies of water that reached so high that their highest points couldn't be seen. In this state, Rowan grinned. Zone. A transparent layer suddenly expanded from Rowan's hand and formed a dome-like shape around the huge area. Emu then noticed that the temperature within this dome was rising at an exponential rate. An unbelievable sight occurred. The huge mass of water that threatened to crush Rowan into the depth of the sea instantly evaporated into hot steam that couldn't inflict any harm to him. It's futile, Emu said coldly. Just when he said so, the hot steam suddenly condensed back into the water once again. Or is it? Rowan responded impassively as the water evaporated again from the incredible heat within the zone, causing Emu's frown to deepen. Reflecting his wrath, Emu's eyes began to glow in a violent red. Ignorant heir of Vasilia, do you truly believe that you have the capability to oppose me? The crown above his head sharpened akin to sea stone spikes that he generated. The black clouds appeared and surrounded his long neck. His attire, the long robe, turned into black similarly to the black clouds and flowed just like water would. Without a doubt, this was the awakened ability of human fruit, model, Umi, the strongest fruit of the world along with the human fruit, model, Nika. Vroom now. Rowan saw that the whole sea was subverted upside down. What was initially lying below was now lying above his head. It was an awe-striking sight, indeed. Let's test it out. Rowan, whose eyes blazed in confidence, stated daringly, between you, the ancient being with over 800 years of experience, and me, the pirate who sailed for 4 years, who is stronger. Then, Rowan's surrounding exploded in a pitch black. In order to defeat the sea that rose above the sky, PAZT, a huge skeleton of black lightning revealed itself. Chapter 191. The water boiling from heat. The hot layer of steam covering the view. The huge mass of water that floated above the sky domineeringly. The spikes of water that rose out of the boiling sea upon Emu's will. Within the still silence, Rowan braced himself. Slowly raising his hand up, Rowan clenched as if gripping onto the empty air. What followed after was simply unbelievable. It was a storm. On the open palm of the black, skeleton-like giant that Rowan manifested around himself, roaring storm of black lightning burst into existence, threatening to grind everything nearby. The air shook and trembled from its intensity. A mighty will could be felt from Rowan's ability, such that even Emu couldn't ignore it as nothing. No word need to be spoken between the two. With both of them having their utmost focus onto each other, Emu finally made his move. Splash the water spikes abruptly shot at once. Its target was Rowan, who lied in the center of the black skeleton giant. However, before they could deal intended damage onto Rowan, the storm on Giant's palm suddenly expanded. The whole area was now covered by the crackling black lightning instead of the steam. The black storm didn't know when to stop and continued to expand more and more. Emu, however, didn't yield, reinforcing himself with his own conqueror's haki. In fusion, Emu slowly, but surely, repelled the storm with patience. The space itself cracked as if being crushed. The huge noise of quakes dominated the whole area, reflecting the ferocity of the collision. Vroom, it was the second clash between two wills. Nox Blade. Within the storm, the black skeleton giant's eyes gleamed in a ferocious red, just as a huge black greatsword, crackling menacingly, appeared in Emu's sight. Emu, in response, held his hand out. In reflection of Emu's will, the sea that was floating above the sky morphed into sharp and transparent mineral, sea stone. With its shape having been changed into countless spikes, Emu made them drop to Rowan at once. It was akin to a divine judgment. The whole sky, filled with sea stone spikes, dropped into the black storm simultaneously. Just how is a human being supposed to fight against that? Or so everyone thought. The black skeleton giant swung its sword widely. With a booming noise, indicating Rowan's use of bounce fruit, its slash impacted the whole area, managing to push Emu back while boom scattering away all the sea stone spikes without an exception. Sea stone is incredibly hard and stiff, to an extent where no one was said to have broke it before. At the same time, it holds the special property of suppressing the devil fruit users, which means I can't allow it to touch me even once. Rowan, who conducted 3 years of training under sea stone, knew just how deadly it was against the devil fruit users. But this man's observation hockey isn't something to overlook either. He tends to foresee the future with his advanced mastery over it, and counters the enemies with sea stone based on the information. If so, Rowan's right eye received a sudden change. Its color shifted from dark red to ivory white. I suppose that it's time to up the game. Subsequently, Emu found his eyes narrowing as the black skeleton giant suddenly threw its great sword to him. How vulgar! From the sea below Emu, the water rapidly swirled before the gigantic hand, constituted of sea stone, soared out. Upon collision, the indestructible sea stone withstood. Rowan's greatsword, in contrast, exploded in a ferocious pitch-black lightning that abruptly engulfed Emu, attempting to crush the latter. Oceanus. Then, a whisper. Though it was unknown how, such a small voice sound reached all the way to Rowan amidst many noises. Rowan readied himself for the following impact. The space in front of him crackled as the huge shield of black lightning flashed into the berth, Nox Aegis. Just then, boom Rowan's sphere of Conqueror's Hockey, manifestation that previously engulfed Emu then exploded. The unbelievable amount of water blasted out in every direction, instantly taking over the whole area within seconds. However, this was the chance that Rowan was looking for. Before realizing the existence of the existence named Bob within himself, Rowan lacked the quality of Supreme King. Hence, when having acquired Vasilia's Eyes of Gorgon from Alabasta, it ended up enhancing his observation hockey instead. Its first stage granted an immense enhancement of his sense, strong enough to sense his own body structure, which Rowan termed it as hypersense. Its second stage, acquired in the Fishman Island, allowed Rowan to perceive the micro-sized particles that vibrated and constituted the whole world. Through this hypervision, Rowan was able to enforce his bounce directly onto them and generate an incredible energy in an instant. Then what about the final ability which awakened during the Delta War? A high risk and high return. The power so ridiculous that it can be considered to be even more helpful than the manifestation of the Conqueror's Hockey. It was the acceleration of his cognition itself, to an extent where the time itself seemed to be slowing down around Rowan. Rowan's mind was simply running extremely fast, just like the computers in the real world. Excel world. Within the world that the huge mass of water was moving at a snail's pace, Rowan placed one foot on top of it, causing it to ripple slowly. The acceleration of cognition itself won't lead anywhere in usual cases, but for me, who has enough physical strength to move within this speed. This is how Rowan will get through Emu's defense. Boing, then came a bounce. The water under Rowan's foot suddenly bounced him up in a bizarre fashion. Did you manage to see the future, Emu? The future that I managed to get a glimpse of? Rowan, within this still world, was rapidly approaching Emu, with his right fist crackling in Conqueror's Hockey. Manifestation. Sea stone spikes. Sharp needles of water, mixed with Conqueror's Hockey, infusion. All of them moved at an incredibly slow rate around Rowan, and he breezed through all of them toward his foe. And there will be no holding back. There will be no such thing as a fair play. Rowan will puncture Emu in one go with his strongest technique. Armageddon. Rowan was now right in front of the enemy. Without any hesitation, Rowan punched forth, intending to critically injure Emu in one go. The black skeleton giant around Rowan reflected his movement and sent its fist forth. Just as Rowan's technique impacted the target, the time around him resumed. Then came an explosion. explosion far greater than any other, dominating the entire area and greedily engulfing the scattered sea in pitch black. The space itself cracked from the sheer impact. Rowan, without the tremor fruit, caused the air itself to quake from the impact alone. The black ripples then burst out repeatedly. Even Dragon's final attack prior to the destruction of the Mary Geoise wasn't comparable to this disaster. No one would believe that it was born out of a human strength alone, but this was the truth. Now, as the continuous explosions finally came to an end, Rowan huffed in a visible exhaustion. He moved at a speed faster than he ever has, and with the cognition faster than it ever has been. His head ached due to the stress, and his right eye pulsed in pain. An ability as scary as this came with a consequence. However, Rowan didn't have time to rest. I did see the future, indeed. Rowan's eyes widened as the gentle voice came from the back. Don't tell me. Rowan instantly realized the scattered water. What Rowan blasted previous wasn't Emu, but the perfect copy of himself that Emu created with the water. It was the first time Rowan found an enemy with the superior observation haki. Perhaps it was him who was complacent. Emu's wicked eyes made an arch, as if mocking Rowan. Observation haki, for the past 800 years after the world government's establishment, has been the tool that he utilized without a stop. Your 4 years cannot be compared to mine, foolish Facilia. Swoosh, one sea stone spike suddenly flew through the empty air where Rowan previously stood. Quickly dodging, Rowan bounced himself backward to evade another sea stone spike that came flying in. Then, splash, all of a sudden, the sea stone spike morphed back into the water, splashing around the area. Boom! Rowan punched the entire water away from him, before quickly manifesting a shield on his side to block a blast of condensed water, which then turned to sea stone spikes that scattered in all directions. In the end, this is all that you amount to. Emu, who stared at Rowan from the above with his hands on his back, said coldly. Ha, is it? Rowan, who landed on one piece of land that previously was a part of Mary Geoise and took in a deep breath, stated.
Babumpa heartbeat.
It was a loud heartbeat that entered Emu's ears. However, for the first time, Emu's facial expression wrinkled up into an evident confusion upon hearing the sound. Babump, the drum of liberation. Emu remembered that sound. It was the characteristic of the man named Binks.
No.
It isn't it? Emu then thought, it may sound similar, but it is different. The hot steam expelled out of Rowan's body. His skin was scorched into bright red, and as he met his eyes with Emu once more, grim heart. Swoosh, he was gone. Immediately following, Emu quickly condensed a dense shield of sea stone on his right to block Rowan's punch, having seen the future. However, swoosh at a crazy speed. Rowan bypassed the sea stone shield. Though his observation haki lacked short, his speed and reflex was faster than it has ever been. Again, Rowan's right eye glowed in brilliant ivory white as the time around him slowed down. Though his eye was aching, Rowan had to do it. Emu was right in front of him. Yes, it had to be him, for Rowan didn't take his eyes away from Emu a single time after being tricked. Nox, therefore, passing through all the harmful sea stones around him, drive. Rowan landed his first blow onto Emu, and simultaneously, the flow of time, in Rowan's perspective, returned back to normal. Emu's eyes widened in a bloodshot as he coughed out a gallon of blood. This was the future that he saw, and before he even had a time to react against such, it was too late. Rowan's speed far faster than even before. He was being propelled back into the sea, with Rowan's technique continuously blasting his abdomen over and over. Splash, the water, upon Emu's crash on its surface, rose from the sheer impact of Rowan's attack. Then, its surface rippled continuously, indicating that Rowan's attack still didn't end. If Emu is able to see the future farther ahead than Rowan, then Rowan simply had to make such future unpreventable. 1 hour. Within 1 hour, I have to kill Emu. Rowan landed back on one piece of land and held his right eye, gently massaging it. Rowan endured the pain and gazed at the sea in front of him with seriousness. Vroom, then, just as Rowan jumped up, the one piece of land was destroyed in one go, and from within, A gigantic dragon constituted out of water flew out, daring to crush Rowan within its sharp fangs. Crack, crack. Subsequently, as it chased after Rowan, its form began to condense into sea stone. It was a frightening sight to see. Rowan quickly flew upward as fast as he could, supersonic, with the fastest technique that he knew of. Because, splash, the whole sea suddenly rose from all sides, chasing after Rowan simultaneously. Everyone could feel it. The sea that was now joined into the all-blue had its level visibly lowered, and from its depth that has split open, Emu's eyes gleamed murderously as he looked up at Rowan. Though there was a sign of pain within his expression, there was no trace of blood lingering. Then, Emu raised his hand at Rowan and clenched it. Ouroboros. The entire sea that was chasing after Rowan, all condensed into ferocious sea stone dragons. What the hell? Law, who stood from afar, treating the injured patients along with Dan, muttered as he saw the majestic sight of sea stone dragons unfold before him. Oi, Law, we got no time. TCH, I know. Quickly turning around, Law returned his focus back onto the site, where Dan was seen holding a box. Dan opened the box and revealed many vials of liquid that lied within. This is the special medicine of Zoe that I mass-produced after acquiring the recipe, Dan stated as he got the needle ready. Its effect is an instant recovery for a temporary span of time, but after the boost is over, you will suffer twice the damage that you had prior to taking the medicine. Dan raised his head up and stared at the group in the front. Zoro, Sanji, Garp, Sengoku, Ace, Dragon, Sabo, etc. All of them, though lying powerlessly, were listening intently to Dan. Luffy was free from the sea stone cuff as well. Law previously detached Luffy's forearms from his body, momentarily using his fruit ability, and shook off the sea stone cuff without much effort. Now, he was staring at Dan with half-lidded eyes, not even having a strength to speak a single word. Raise your hand up if you are fine with the downside of the medicine. Are all of you insane? Everyone in the front raised their hands up, rendering Law flabbergasted. Luffy's hand twitched. His index finger slowly lifted up, causing Dan to chuckle. Man, this is why I like you guys. Dan turned around and saw the other ongoing battles. Karina, Cavendish, everyone. They were struggling with all their might. It won't be long before they will be overwhelmed. Law, and the rest of you, let's get this started. Aye. The Heart Pirates all nodded with a salute. I'm your captain, you idiots. Law barked at his crew comically. It was time for a counterattack. Chapter 192. Clang. Karina clashed her knives against Mihawk's huge sword, Yoru. His armament haki is too potent. Karina's fruit ability wasn't able to penetrate through Mihawk's defense and shred Yoru apart. Zoom quickly teleporting herself, Karina managed to dodge Mihawk's sword that abruptly slashed through where she was previously dwelling within. Then, the knives in Karina's hands shattered, unable to handle the sharpness of Mihawk's attacks. Weak. Mihawk commented with boredom in his eyes. Is this it, Phantom? Karina chuckled in response. Yep. She already knew very well beforehand that her strength lacks severely against Mihawk. If so, why did she decide to face him alone? The Grimheart Pirates knew that fighting separately will, without a doubt, result in their losses. There was a limit to how long they are able to hold the enemies back. Therefore, just when Rowan left to face Emu, Karina commanded in his stead. When including teleport fruit that she had, the distance wasn't an obstacle. Coupled with Dan and Cavendish, who consumed the fruits that can be considered the fastest, there is an endless number of strategies that they can come up with. Zoom at the next moment, Mihawk found his eyes narrowed. Instead of Karina alone, along with the sudden purple flashes, Alfred was leaping toward Mihawk in his frightening wolf form. Clang. Unfazed by the sudden attack, Mihawk quickly raised his sword sideways and blocked Karina's knives and Alfred's fangs simultaneously. Zoom. Then, Mihawk's vision suddenly subverted, and he found Sakazuki's cluster of magma right in front of him. Swoosh. Without an effort, Mihawk moved his arm at a blurry speed, severing the magma in one go. Ignis. Subsequently, Mihawk turned back and saw the huge arrow of blue flame heading toward him. Arrow. I see. Mihawk swung his sword once again. The petty tricks like these were naught but a child's play in his eyes. Subsequently, Urge was found to be hit by Sakazuki's fist imbued by dense magma, propelling back to where Cavendish and Kong were clashing against each other. Mihawk's eyes flashed in red before he vanished, Clang preventing Karina from reaching Urge. Karina's eyes narrowed. Zoom Mihawk then saw Kong's fist and Cavendish's sword approaching him from both sides. Clang Cavendish's Durandal was blocked by Mihawk's Yoru. Mihawk, with calmness, turned his face to Kong expectantly. Swoosh Kong's fist stopped right in front of Mihawk's face. Teleport, teleport, fruit. Kong gritted his teeth. It surely is dangerous. Karina didn't respond. Instead, she placed her hand on Cavendish's shoulder. Zoom Karina, along with Cavendish and Mihawk, whose sword was in contact with Cavendish's, then teleported right in front of Sakazuki, whose body was completely surrounded by magma. Above Sakazuki, Urge was dropping with a size that resembled a giant. From below, Alfred was rapidly traveling towards Sakazuki in his wolf form, using Jeppo. Sakazuki found himself grimacing as Karina suddenly appeared along with Cavendish and Mihawk. He was surrounded from all sides. However, Sakazuki knew very well that Mihawk possessed the armament haki that rivaled Sengoku. There was no need to hesitate. Volcanic, Zoom Karina suddenly vanished again. Zoom before reappearing in an instant, with Weevil's Naginata about to cut through Sakazuki's throat. Clang Sakazuki urgently imbued armament haki on top of his dense layer of magma, defending against Weevil's strike. Well, what am I doing here, Weia? Weevil flapped his arms as if trying to fly, but fell from the middle of the sky, for there was no method for him to keep himself afloat. Splash at the same time. Urge, Alfred, and Cavendish all attacked Sakazuki simultaneously. Inga Zarashi. Beautiful sword. Brilliant rose. Alfred's monocle flashed as his haki-imbued fangs slashed through Sakazuki. Boom! The layer of magma crumbled apart due to the three pirates' attacks, though Sakazuki seemed to be fine. Clang meantime, Karina held Mihawk back, who gazed down at her with boredom. I suppose that I should get a little serious here. Karina immediately backed off with a dark expression. Mihawk coated his blackened sword, Yoru, with Conqueror's haki, infusion. This is where the real battle starts. But we aren't without a plan either. Karina then smiled knowingly, just as the intense beam of blue lightning suddenly struck Mihawk, who clashed his sword against it and demolished the technique single-handedly. Been waiting for me? Dan stood next to Karina with a grin. Hee maybe. Subsequently, Full Metal, Armament Haki, Emission, Conqueror's Haki, Infusion. When combined with his ability to harden his own body to an incredible degree, Ace wasn't someone who could be ignored. Ox Blitz. Boom! Mihawk rotated his body, and using the momentum, swung his sword against Ace. The incredible burst of haki occurred, and the sky crackled in the ferocious black lightning. Not enough, Iron Fist. Mihawk commented coldly, I know. To which Ace replied with a grin. Ryusoken. Then, Mihawk's eyes widened. From some distance away, Dragon was standing by. The wind began to pick up. It swirled around Dragon, and in due time, a huge storm appeared on the battlefield once again. The black lightning thundered across the field under Dragon's control, reflecting his will to conquer. But that wasn't the end. Zebek, how? Kong found himself shouting as Garp, with an enraged expression, was rapidly flying toward him with his right fist cocked back. Dragon's roar. Slash fist. Boom! Mihawk, revealing his full potential, met Dragon's strike under the pressure of Ace's attack. As if proving that he is the strongest swordsman of the world, he withstood the powerhouses with an adamant will of his own. Kong, on the other hand, Garp, you, was sent propelling down to the sea, unable to handle Garp's fearsome punch. You are nothing but a scum, Kong. Garp growled. Justice my ass, how can you ignore all the wrongdoings that the world government is inflicting onto the innocents right now? From the bottom, Sengoku was awaiting Kong with a deep frown. I've lost all my respect for you, Kong. Sengoku stated as his body began to transform into a huge Buddha. If Marine doesn't protect the weak, then what's the point of its existence? Is your loyalty to the celestial dragons out of justice or out of greed? I think the answer is obvious. Kong, with panic, encased his whole body with armament haki, bracing for the impact. HM. From Sengoku's outstretched palm, the pure force burst out of it and smashed into Kong. BOM watching as Kong vomited blood in midair, Sakazuki found himself sweating slightly. Vroom from atop the sky. A huge comet was rapidly falling to where Sakazuki stood. From his left and right, Cavendish and Dan were launching their respective attacks as well. Have you been expecting this, Fleet Admiral? Isho, who stood on top of one Sea King down the sea, said just as Sakazuki was smashed between 3 different attacks at once. BOM, how fun. Robin stated as she grew countless haki-imbued arms from Sea King's back and blocked one pacifista's laser beam. I'd rather spend time reading, however. Nay. Farrell cried as he slammed into the same pacifista. Boom at the same time, Jozu, whose right arm transformed into diamond, punched one approaching sky creature down. Since when did the minx have the medicine like this? I don't recall. You talk a lot for a diamond, Bonnie shouted as she placed her hand on top of the pacifista that Farrell slammed onto, before accelerating its aging process by an incredible degree. In no due time, the pacifista withered into a broken machine.
Oi oi.
Just then, one blond man in a black suit, Sanji, shouted as he kicked another sky creature from diving onto Robin. Leave the ladies alone, you hideous bird. Then, he landed and flashed a smile to Robin and Bonnie. May I learn the precious names of the world's most beautiful flowers? Clang. Robin, with a calm smile, grew an arm around Sanji's shoulder and blocked a bullet from one world government agent's gun. Watch your back, you idiot, Bonnie shouted in annoyance. You trying to get yourself killed, or what? Oh, Sanji froze with a blush. It was so hot. His eyes turned into a heart and his body swayed comically, causing Robin and Bonnie to take a step back with a freaked-out expression. Boom! What is wrong with you? At some distance away, Bartolomeo cried as Kuma's fist slammed onto his barrier. Though it didn't crumble down, the force was enough to make Bartolomeo shiver. Hold on, Barto boy, Ivankov shouted before hopping to Kuma and winking. Wake up, Kuma! Death wink. Boom. Kuma's head was knocked back due to a sudden explosion from Ivankov's technique. Nice one, Ivankov-san. Jinbe, seizing the chance, propelled himself to the falling Kuma and sent his palm forth. Fishman karate, sharkskin palm thrust. BOM. While Kuma was being flown up in the air, Prominence roared as it coiled around Pluton, before thrashing the huge ship into a nearby piece of land that was floating on the water. Boom! HHHH from within the Pluton, the celestial dragon screamed. What is going on outside? Sir Roseward screamed as he held his bleeding head. Interesting. Mihawk let out an amused smile, just as Ace and Dragon's attacks finally died down. He landed on top of one piece of land that was floating. With him being surrounded by enemies all around, any sense of boredom was gone from him. Now, Mihawk's eyes headed to his front, where Zoro was glaring at him with a bandana wrapped around his head. So we meet again, Hawkeye? Zoro lowered his posture and got into a stance. It's a little too early for you, Roronoa Zoro. Mihawk replied impassively. Let's see about that. Zoro then moved. 9-sword style. Zoro's eyes gleamed as his sword slashed at once. Azura. Silver mist. Swoosh. Zoro, at a rapid speed, moved behind Mihawk. Immediately after, 2 of his swords shattered effortlessly, and he fell to one knee. Damn it. Splash. Just then, Weevil made his appearance out of the sea that he previously fell into, and climbed onto the land where Mihawk and Zoro were standing. Ugh, not again. Boom. Immediately after, Ace and Sabo landed next to where Zoro was huffing by. You seem to be struggling, Luffy's friend, Sabo exclaimed with a grin. Says someone who's weaker than me. Zoro snorted as he stood back up with a shaky body. Zoom from the side, Karina, Dan, and Cavendish flashed into the scene. ready for the raid against Dracul. We are in the endgame now. Karina remarked seriously, either we stand victorious within the time limit, or die. Gwahaha. Cavendish laughed heartily. Simple. I like it. Dan shifted his eyes to where the heart pirates were. The final one should be treated by now. Dum, Captain? The bear mink, Beepo, spoke up warily. What's going on this straw hat boy? No idea. For the first time in his career as a surgeon, Law didn't have an answer. Nishishishi. Dum, the final patient whom they treated with the special medicine from Zoe, Monkey D. Luffy, currently was in an abnormal state. Crackling in laughter, the scrawny boy had his hair burning in a form of a white flame. His body was shrouded by a white cloud, and his attire was glowing in pure white. What devil fruit did he eat? Law muttered with suspicion in his eyes. Wasn't it rubber fruit? Law momentarily turned to the crew member of the Heart Pirates who answered his question and looked back at Luffy with stupefaction. How is this rubber? Boing then. Luffy bounced up from the back of the Sea King that he was lying upon, which bent unnaturally akin to rubber. Nishishishi. For some reason, I feel like laughing. Beepo scratched the back of his head. He seems fine, though. Swoosh. Rowan's figure vanished as one gigantic sea stone dragon flew through where he stood by. He was entirely surrounded by the dragons that flew around him in an unpredictable manner, as if they were alive. Then, Rowan's eyes blazed in dark crimson. The huge mass of Conqueror's Haki. Manifestation spread around him, darkening the sky within seconds. Pazt the crackling sound of lightning. Before the sea stone dragons could slam onto Rowan, the similarly shaped dragons of black lightning came into the existence, resisting the opposing dragons fearlessly. Bio, Wim, it was a deadlock. All dragons were at a tie, unable to defeat one another at the moment. However, Rowan knew that it wasn't going to last forever. It won't be long before, splashes splash the sea stone dragons that are daring to bite through his own manifestation of dragons, then burst into the sharp needles of water all of a sudden, completely trapping Rowan in an instant. Bounce, boom, impact. Rowan immediately blasted his whole surrounding and repelled all the water from reaching him. Ouroboros. And it was just the beginning. The water that he blasted away, all condensed back into the sea stone dragons and soared toward him for the second time. Swoosh. Rowan vanished. The sea stone dragons coiled and swam around the sky in an elegant manner. Upon the sprinkles of water, the rainbow has appeared in the sky, enlightening the battlefield in a bizarre atmosphere. The whole sky rippled. The heavy usage of water from Emu caused the air itself to become so humid. Emu slowly moved with certainty, as if knowing what Rowan will do next. Your eyes, Emu whispered. They grant an incredible acceleration of your thought process, which serves as a notable boost on your speed and reflex. I do admit that it has brought me to a surprise the first time. However, now, Emu smiled with cold eyes. You won't be able to reach me, ever again. The sea god was full of confidence. Immediately after, Rowan appeared in front of Emu with the gigantic black skeleton having manifested once again. For sure, Emu knew what was about to come. Armageddon. The incredible explosions occurred consecutively, boom boom boom, for countless times. Boom boom boom, however. Within these explosions that dominated the whole space, Emu stood with his head tilted to his left. Rowan's outstretched fist, without a doubt, was pointed elsewhere. Rowan's technique missed. I don't fall for the same trick twice. Emu stated impassively, didn't I already say so? Rowan didn't respond. Instead, ignoring the fatigue that was building up within his body, Rowan twisted his body to dodge two sea stone dragons that flew past him all of a sudden, before launching flurries of attacks on Emu. Boom 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 boom. Exquisitely positioned punches. Boom 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 boom. Kicks enhanced with his Conqueror's Haki. Manifestation. Plasma. Techniques involving heat. Cannon. Boom. All were for naught. The ability to morph one's body into water, the ability to control the entire water around oneself, and the ability to construct and decompose sea stone with water as a material. Along with the unfathomable mastery over the observation hockey, Emu seemed undefeatable. Yet, Rowan didn't give up. A cowardly thought didn't enter his mind for a single moment. Aren't you, BOM, tired already, foolish Facilia? BOM Rowan's eyes blazed at its maximum as he continued to utilize Excel World over and over. The stress was being built up. He was notably slowing down. However, his will burned brighter than ever, not knowing when to yield. Swoosh, and now, Rowan appeared behind Emu, intending to crush Emu's head with his hockey-imbued arm. Then, he froze in midair, unable to move. The whole area is now filled with water. Though it's the sky, it is the sea at the same time. The whole area was surrounded by the steam, cloud, mist, all forms that water can take, thanks to Emu's prolonged use of his ability. The White Sea, Rowan thought. Within this domain of mine, nothing shall be granted a strength to resist. The reason I am unable to move is because Emu, he turned the entire droplets of water within the air into the micro-sized sea stones. What a fine control of devil fruit that it was. Being able to utilize the fruit ability to this precision and mastery, Emu's arrogance wasn't baseless. PZD, there was no way that Rowan would accept such an ending. Gritting his teeth, Rowan quickly burst the entirety of his surrounding with the maximum capability of Conqueror's hockey. Manifestation that he was capable of. However, it was to no avail. Even after years of training with the sea stone cuffs, it was simply impossible for a devil fruit user such as himself to exert more strength than a slow movement enough to swim. With the sea stone of this purity, it was an entirely different matter, for it was incomparable to any other sea stones that Rowan experienced in his life. A pitiful loss. That's all that you amount to. Emu's eyes made an arch out of amusement. How miserable. They placed their hopes in you, and look how you failed them. The sea stone dragons were now circling around the immobilized Rowan. Does this answer your question? For years of experience. How amusing. Did you believe that you'd be capable of dethroning me? Emu clenched his hand. In response, the sea stone dragons rushed onto Rowan and encased him entirely. Vulgar pirate, suffer. Rot in the depth of the sea. Struggle. Resist until the end, and despair upon learning that your strength cannot overcome mine. Resist? Rowan weakly muttered. Without any further word, Emu raised his hand up. I am the immortal, the being who transcended beyond human's limit and the overseer of the world. For daring to oppose me, receive the divine judgment. Vroom, one gigantic sea stone pole revealed itself from above, before slamming onto the sphere of sea stone that encased Rowan. Boom, the entire structure then fell into the water, plash trapping Rowan within the vast sea. However, Emu wasn't able to hear Rowan's words as he was falling. The struggle of the weak. Struggle. Resist. The hockey of resistance. Chapter 193. Help. From within one piece of land that was floating by the sea, the cry of one man was heard. Nojiko, who was standing on top of it, raised her eyebrow, just as one pacifista was corroding away from her back. Help me, please. The cry was miserable. At the same time, it was pleading. Nojiko felt her mind weakening upon such a heartfelt cry. She sighed while approaching the source of the sound. Transforming her hand into a paw, she effortlessly lifted up the ruins, freeing one man from being crushed under. Nojiko then had her eyes widened. Of all possibilities, the man whom she saved is a celestial dragon? The man with a huge lump on his head gulped. With the utmost gratitude, he bowed to Nojiko. To thank you. If not for your help, I would have lost my life. What are you doing here? Nojiko found her voice becoming cold. All worries that previously lingered in her mind melted away, and all that remained was disdain. I was previously knocked out, and far too much time has passed since then, but, however, what that celestial dragon stated then surprised her. I am here to ask King Emu to stop his wrongdoing. The celestial dragon with the noble will. It was the first time Nojiko has ever seen one. My name is Don Quixote Josgard, a human just like any other. Doom. Upon sighting Emu's approach, that was the first thought that entered Usopp's mind. Heh. His legs trembled. He unconsciously gulped while sweating profusely. He knew that he stood no chance against the sea god. The appearance of this man meant one thing, that Rowan lost. And frankly speaking, the rest of them had enough of Emu already. Usopp believed that there was no chance for the rest of them to defeat Emu by themselves. Nonetheless, Usopp pointed his weapons at the man through the use of his fruit ability. Don't hesitate. Usopp magnet style. Usopp clenched his sweaty hands before launching all weapons at once. Final star. Plop, plop, plop. All the bullets and cannonballs were easily stopped by the wall of water that abruptly sprang forth. Boom then. The muffled noise of an explosion. Usopp's weapons were too weak to overcome the otherworldly being in front of him. Emu continued his approach. TDCH. Usopp gritted his teeth. He felt his whole body dominating himself. But I am the great warrior of the sea. Usopp shouted at Emu. I won't allow you to pass. Tendi. Emu lazily waved his hand, and in contrast to his small movement, a whole tsunami arose from the side, ready to crash onto Usopp in one go. From afar, Chopper's eyes widened in panic as he saw what trouble Usopp got himself in. Usopp! Usopp closed his eyes tight. Kaya, stop this. Then, Usopp saw a shadow looming over him. Raising his head up, he saw one short and obese man with a bizarre hairstyle. Though Usopp never met that man, he knew who this man was based on the man's attire. See Celestial Dragon? The tsunami came to a stop before it crashed onto the two of them. Don Quixote Josgard, what do you think you are doing? The sole Celestial Dragon who refused to board Pluton. Emu left that man alone, knowing that the Celestial Dragons are capable of nothing and will serve as nothing but scarecrows for him to control. However, seeing such an incapable man standing in front of him, rebelling against him, Emu felt something cracking within him. Your Highness, Josgard shouted adamantly, this is wrong. The whole war was wrong from the start. What have they done? For what wrong did they commit for them to face your judgment? An act of treason. Emu growled in fury. I won't say it twice. Move over, lowly slave.
No.
Usopp found his jaw dropping wide open. This man. Usopp couldn't help but wonder if he was some hidden expert with enough strength to defeat Emu. The only reason why you earthworms were left alive is because you are quite useful as puppets. Brain-dead, complacent, ignorant, and selfish. It is your vices that I value. Emu's eyes gleamed in rage. You are expected to hold no ideal, no dream, and no desire. You are meant and built to be hollow. For me to utilize you worms as the celestial dragons for the sake of my ambition. Josgard visibly trembled. His face was pale, and he was drooling unconsciously. Upon facing Emu's potent conqueror's haki, Josgard stood no chance. It was simply horrible. Emu didn't even allow Josgard to faint. A torture. Josgard was going under incredible pain as if his own soul was being crushed. Damn it! Then, one woman, Nojiko, came in intervening. What is wrong with you? Aren't you the celestial dragon like those other filths? Emu watched as Nojiko, while sweating profusely from nervousness, grabbing Usopp and Josgard before beginning to run away from him. Silently, just like how a predator gazes at one's prey. As if reflecting his fury, the whole sea swirled. The pieces of land all crashed onto each other, with the sudden whirlpool pulling them to the center. Boom! Let me go, my savior. Josgard, in Nojiko's arms, struggled to get out. I am sure that King Emu will listen. I just have to try again and again. Idiot! Look properly for once. Nojiko shouted with disbelief. Do you think your words will reach that man who wishes for the domination of the entire world? As if, what is going on? Robin, who was huffing along with the others as they faced pacifistas and the other enemies around them, expressed her disbelief upon sighting Emu. No, that isn't right. Captain lost. Urich muttered with a shaky grin. Boom Carmen grimaced as she sighted Emu. while facing Sakazuki alongside Dragon, Alfred, and Urich. Not good, Dragon said with sharp eyes, quickly assessing the whole situation and calculating the best strategy in his head. Mihawk simply stared at Emu without any emotion. Simply crossing his arms as his foes were breathing heavily, Mihawk met his eyes with Emu, who looked back at him with nothing but mockery. Weak as always, Emu said in disdain. You never cease to disappoint me, Mihawk. Mihawk didn't respond. He simply snorted while sheathing his sword on his back. Then, Emu saw that one burly man, Kong, was being flown to him as he was severely bleeding all over. Kong, upon sighting Emu, lit up, "I Emu-sama." Puck, a sharp sea stone spike, suddenly sprang forth from the air, penetrating through Kong's brain in a single go. There is no use for a failure. The former fleet admiral of the Marine, and the current commander-in-chief, died just like that, in an anticlimactic death. Sakazuki gritted his teeth in a cold sweat. He clenched his fists that were shaking uncontrollably. He felt pressured, for if he fails to defeat his foes as well, he too will be killed without a doubt. In the end, it's still the same, huh? Emu slowly raised his hands up with a wrinkled-up expression, focusing his eyes on Josgard at the back. I will have to do it all by myself. Within the whirlpool where everyone has gathered all together, the walls of water all arose simultaneously. No, Karina whispered. Her eyes were shadowed by her bangs, and her grip on her knives tightened. Rowan hasn't lost yet. Somehow, I know. He's still alive. Karina spoke as if convincing herself, all we got to do is to hang on. Nishishishi. I think so too. Then came a jovial voice that everyone recognized. Emu stopped on his track. Ace, Sabo, Garp, Zoro, Sanji, they all turned back with evident joy. Luffy. Joy boy. Emu's eyes widened. The sole person whom Emu found to be on par with him, the man who would have won 800 years ago if Emu didn't extract his heart from his body. Nika, the sun god and his arch-nemesis. That man was standing in a form of a scrawny boy with a straw hat on his back. The walls of water then turned into sharp spikes of sea stone and closed into the middle rapidly. Emu intended to kill all the enemies within the area at once, for his fine control allowed him to evade those on his side. Mihawk, without any word, walked out of the land that he was standing on top of and bypassed the sea stone spikes. Sakazuki sweated profusely as he looked to his left and right, before slowly moving out of the area with the use of Jeppo. Nishishi, Luffy, with a grin, stomped his foot on the ground. In everyone's eyes, the ground began to churn strangely before the edges of the land suddenly stretched unnaturally like rubbers. I can't defeat that funny crown man, but Rowan definitely can. And for some reason, I know it, Luffy cried while laughing. He's going to come back and finish the deed. Luffy stretched his arms and grabbed onto the edges of the land, before pulling them together to create a dome that shielded everyone from the sea stone spikes. Luffy. Sanji's cigarette fell out of his mouth. What in the world? Dragon found a smile on his face. Therefore, hang on. Boom, the sea stone spikes simultaneously crashed onto the now ceilings. Just like rubber wood, they waved up and down with great elasticity, holding their own against the sea stone spikes to some extent. What happened to your grandson? Sengoku whispered to Garp. Why is his head burning like that? Garp's eyes narrowed. HM? Talk later. Now isn't the time for that. Tsuru stated with a serious expression. Everyone watched as the sea stone spikes poked onto the rubbery ceilings. Boing, 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 they bounced back and forth with an increasing magnitude. It won't be long before Luffy's defense cracks down. In this situation, that's right, it isn't over yet. Karina, as if having been infected by Luffy's grin, made a grin herself. As long as we can hold back until Rowan returns, it's our win. She began to glow in purple. I will place my trust in him, because, Karina turned to the rest of the crew, he's our captain, right? Dan grinned. You bet. Carmen snorted knowingly. What else do you expect? Captain only fights when he's confident of winning. Gwahaha. True. I saw Captain fighting that Garp before. He was running like crazy. Cavendish laughed. Shoo, Master Cavendish. I thought that we are going to keep that one quiet. Alfred shushed Cavendish while adjusting his monocle. Nay. Farrell huffed while standing proudly. If he doesn't come, I'm going to dig up his corpse and put Farrell's feces on his face, Robin said darkly, causing Urge to back off in a pale expression. Welp, Urge commented with a gulp. Now you definitely have to come, Captain. HRRRGHHHH. Luffy was at his utmost effort in defending against the sea stone spikes. Everyone tensed up, preparing themselves for the upcoming attack. However, just then, shambles. Swoosh, the mass teleportation was dictated by law. Everyone was brought out of the dome in an instant, just as, boom, the sea stone spikes demolished the structure completely. Huff. Fuck Law muttered powerlessly, before falling down onto one sea king that he was standing on top of. Thud, everyone was out. Oh, thanks, Whitecap guy. Luffy bent down and petted the unconscious Law, to which the Heart Pirates stared weirdly. Emu seemed unfazed by it. With a simple wave of his hand, an even greater number of sea stone spikes were generated, before simultaneously blasting to where everyone stood. Leave this to me, Karina stated with determination. Stepping up, she took a deep breath. Something that I feel within me. Is this the awakening? Zoom, a huge, circular gap of void then appeared in front of everyone. Black hole. It was an amazing sight. The sea stone spikes that were flying toward them ended up entering the portal created by Karina before ZOM, white hole, exiting out of another portal that was located right above the sea. Splash, 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 causing the sea stone spikes to impact the surface of the water instead. Damn. Ace exclaimed with amazement. Nishishi. That's cool. Luffy laughed, before turning back to where more sea stone spikes were incoming. This is going to be fun. Haki of Resistance. It was the fourth type of Haki that Rowan awakened due to the special property of him being a reincarnator. The different sides of the same coin. What he initially believed to be the opposites were quite similar instead. The Haki of Resistance and the Conqueror's Haki were akin to him and Uchiha Bob. Shanks said back. Then, if him and Uchiha Bob can be merged, then why not the Haki of Resistance and the Conqueror's Haki? Within the sphere of sea stone that continued to descend into the dark sea, within this small space where the oxygen was rapidly running out, Rowan slowly raised his hand up and clenched. Resist. The Haki of Resistance. It was a transparent liquid-like substance that encased his hand. Rowan used it many times before, but now that he looked at it, it seemed incomplete. Rowan felt the shortness of breath. The air was scarce, and the longer he stayed within this sphere, the more likely it is for him to end up just like Davy Jones. The end is near. Rowan is one step before achieving true freedom, free of any concerns. The being that haunted him for quite some time, Emu, the supposed sea god, was finally before his reach. And no way in hell am I giving up. Understood, GM. The very strongest passed as if reflecting his determination. The black lightning of Conqueror's Haki. Manifestation burst into existence. Rowan's breathing fastened. His eyes blazed up in ferocious dark red as he moved his shaky arm forth, pushing the Conqueror's Haki. Manifestation onto the Haki of Resistance. See, the two different types of Haki were repelling one another with incredible strength. The sparks scattered within the sphere, generating bright flashes over and over. Rowan's breathing fastened even further. He was sweating all over his body. His whole body shook as he bit his lips, striving to achieve the goal in his mind. PAZT if one can conquer, but the others are prevented from doing so. Just how unfair is it? Then came the light brighter than any other. Within the dark sea, the light entered, lighting up the area brighter than it ever has. Crack, crack within the space where the air was almost running out, the thick layer of sea stone began to crack. The hardest mineral in the world, thought to be indestructible by many. The scene which everyone thought to be impossible was happening within the bright depth of the sea. PAZT then, the sea stone sphere completely shattered. As if cowering under the incredible will of domination, the whole sea trembled and vibrated rapidly. Vroom, the sea split into two, parting itself open to give the way to one man who stood within. Plop that man took one step forward to mark an end to the world government's reign. Chapter 194. This war is over, Emu stated. Around him, all the noteworthy individuals, Dragon, Ace, Sabo, and more, were lying with newfound injuries on themselves. And the problem was, the side effect of the special medicine from Zoe was yet to come. Within Emu's lifted up right hand lied Luffy, who seemed vividly exhausted. The previously white-colored form that he had on himself was now gone, and he had no strength remaining within himself to continue the fight. Karina, who was barely clinging onto the consciousness, groaned. She turned her head to where Emu stood with Luffy and attempted to exert her ability one more time to prevent the Straw Hat Boy's death. Well, shit, but eventually Karina ended up lowering her arm. She already used up everything that she got, and there was no way that she could prevent it. All the allies were out of commission, including the Grimheart Pirates. With Emu, Mihawk, Sakazuki still standing, and the other allies being busy dealing with the remaining force of the world government, the future seemed bleak. I admit, Emu said coldly, I made a mistake. His grip on Luffy's neck tightened. It was a foolish idea to keep you restrained, Joy Boy. How thoughtless was I, to think of controlling you within my hands, when the only way is to kill you over and over, for eternity. From Emu's right arm, the water moistures combined and clustered into a sword-like shape before condensing into the sea stone. PAZT, the crackling noise of the Conqueror's haki, infusion. By personally executing Luffy, Emu planned to call the end of the war. Mihawk and Sakazuki silently watched Emu from the back, unknown as to what they were thinking. However, one thing was for sure. Emu's immense Conqueror's haki momentarily sipped away their will to move. They simply stood and watched, having forgotten of the advantages that they can take by taking the lives of the already fallen enemies. It's my victory, once again. Finally, he moved. Emu pushed his right hand forward, intending to stab Luffy through the heart and end the boy's life. Or he tried to. PAZT in front of Emu, all of a sudden, stood. One man whose entirety was encased within the ferocious white lightning that crackled potently. Just like a bolt of lightning, he made an appearance at a speed that no one was able to follow, and his hand was gripping onto Emu's sea-stone sword. Mihawk's eyes narrowed as he unsheathed his sword. Sakazuki grimaced. Jolting up from his trance, he immediately got ready to fight the enemy in front of him. Though unknown to himself, his body was trembling from dread. Then, the man's free hand slowly moved and gripped the wrist of Emu's arm that was holding Luffy's neck. How did you get out? Emu growled. His eyes blazed murderously as the Conqueror's hack exploded from him. However, it was then abruptly suppressed back. Emu felt hollow. Crunch. Emu couldn't continue his words. His wrist, which he encased with not only the armament haki, but also the sea stone, was broken without any resistance under the man's grip. His entire right hand was detached from his forearm. Emu found his eyes widening from a shock. Luffy was falling down to the ground, out of Emu's grip, and safely landed within the man's arms. Idiot! From afar, Karina whispered in relief, You are late again? Yeah, sorry about worrying you. The man, Rowan, responded with a serious expression, with his eyes still on Emu. You can relax now. Take a nap, and when you wake up, Rowan stood against three men who were known to stand on the top of the world. Everything will be over. Sakazuki, the current fleet admiral of Marine, clenched his sweaty hands as the magma slowly emanated out of his body. Mihawk, the strongest swordsman in the world, stood in silence, ready for the battle. And in the middle, Emu was massaging his temple with his remaining hand, trying to ease his rage. Watching Rowan's back, Karina slowly closed her eyes with a smile, placing absolute trust in her captain. It's not suitable to fight here, isn't it? Rowan's ivory white-colored right eye then blazed brilliantly once again. Swoosh, and before the three could even react, they were standing on the sea far away from the site. Boom! In the middle of another piece of land, Kuma sat on the ground, having been defeated by the surrounding rebels. What have they done to you, Kuma? Ivankov placed his hand on Kuma with sorrow, but the cyborg didn't respond. My condolences. Jinbi placed his palms together in respect of Kuma. Boom! Upon Prominence's huge flame blast, Pluton was rapidly being heated up from within. Roswald, one conscious celestial dragon screamed, "I can't tolerate this no more." That man stood up and wobbled to the staircase. "And no, don't, Francisco!" Roswald screamed in terror, but the man didn't listen. "Don't you dare, don't me, Roswald. Enough of this idiocy. I'm going out and calling my slaves." Creak! The thick metal door slowly opened. Within there lied another metal door. Creak! One by one, the celestial dragon, Francisco, slowly opened the way to the exit, ignoring Roswald's cry. "Stop!" Roswald, if he had enough strength, he would have physically stopped the man. However, he was currently crushed under many unconscious celestial dragons, who were all obese beyond belief. Creak! And now, the final door opened. "Curse onto you, Roswald. I'm not inviting you to my next party." Boom! Prominence's flame blast hit Pluton again, and this time, the way to the inside was open. Without an exception. All the celestial dragons who were hiding within the Pluton burned away in agony. In the end, it was their ignorance and cowardliness that got them killed. And after, Boom having received the damage from the inside, the entire Pluton exploded away into pieces. Its exterior may be tougher than any ship that exists in this world, but its interior wasn't strong enough to overcome Prominence's assault. Kai! The sky creatures were gathering over time. Though they were lacking in comparison to the huge sea kings, they soon covered the entire sky with their sheer number. Ooh! At the same time, Shirahoshi seemed to be tired and scared, being on a barge of crying. "Hold on, my little Shirahoshi." Neptune, while bleeding from his head, smiled, "It's all going to be fine." All the fishmen fought off against the sky creatures and the remaining forces of the world government, with the determination not to let their friends down. And now, as if their efforts were being paid off, "Did I make you wait, everyone?" Jinbi Boom Jinbi has swiftly made his return, ready to help his race in defeating their enemies. "I'm here as well. Inimim fufufu." Ivankov grinned as he stood alongside Jinbi. "But it surely is concerning," Jinbi muttered in a cold sweat as he looked up at the sky. "That's still Lunarian in the sky. He must be the Uranus. How come he's not reached his limit yet?" "Doesn't matter, Jinbi." The firstborn of King Neptune, Prince Fukaboshi, huffed as he stood next to Jinbi. "You know full well that there's no other option but to kill that man." Jinbi nodded resolutely. "Indeed, Prince. And if I am correct, that man's defense must be down right now, with the flame not being present within his back." "Yes, if the Lunarians are just the same as what the record says." Jinbi lowered his posture and got into the particular stance of fishman karate. He was about to begin his attacks before, the sound of a drum entered everyone's ears. The fishman momentarily turned around and saw, "Pirate, Empress," Jinbi said in a surprise, "the Kuja pirates." "Che." Hancock clicked her tongue as she stood on her ship proudly. "A promise is a promise indeed. And if it's for the fall of that despicable world government, then I will gladly do so." "Well said, my queen," one woman behind her said with her eyes turned into hearts. "All members," Hancock, holding her hand out to the front, commanded charismatically. "Attack!" Ya! The fishmen found their jaws dropped open. The strong warriors from Amazon Lily all leaped from the ship while holding their respective weapons, before jumping from one sky creature to the other. King Neptune's eyes narrowed, finding this as the chance. "This is our chance. Suppress the enemies." Rhea, the world government agents who sneaked in from left and right, found themselves being pushed back one by one. "Perfume." Hancock slammed her kick into one sky creature. "Femur." Boom! The sky creature, whose eyes were turned into hearts, instantly petrified into stone, before falling into the water. Fishman karate, secret art, Jinbi, at the same time, hurled a clustered pack of water within his hands. Vagabond drill. Boom! The condensed wave of water traveled across the packed sky, blasting through the huge number of sky creatures at once. "Now is the chance, sister." Hancock's sister, Boa Marigold, shouted as the sky creature that she stood on top of was descending due to her heavy weight. Finish him. The other sibling, Boa Sandersonia, hissed with a grin. Marrow, marrow. Hancock's eyes gleamed as was airborne, just as the heart-like substance in her hand was pulled back by her other hand like an arrow. Slave arrow. The heart, upon being shot, divided into hundreds of pink arrows and shot out to the still Lunarian prince, Uranus. All the arrows unnaturally bent, flying to the target at once. Kai! The sky creatures cried in panic, but it was to no avail. By the combined force of the fishmen, Kuja pirates, and Ivankov, none of them were able to get through. And now, Uranus was seen with his entire body stabbed by Hancock's arrows. It isn't enough, Hancock whispered in shock. But this shall be. Then, Jinbi was seen flying to the Uranus rapidly by the help of the water current that rose from the sea in a bizarre manner. Fishman karate, secret art, Jinbi's straight punch slammed into Uranus's already damaged body, demon brick fist. Boom! With the exploding sound, Uranus was sent blasting down to the sea without any resistance. Splash Kai! At the same time, all the sky creatures who were struggling desperately suddenly stopped and expressed confusion. Clang one swing. Myhawk, knowing that the man in front of him wasn't to be underestimated, swung his blade at his strongest. Yet, it was blocked with a single finger. And before he could even react, swoosh this head, somehow, was looking back at his headless body. Ho! Myhawk's detached head expressed an interest before his vision blackened. For the world's strongest swordsman, it was such an anticlimactic ending. Sakazuki's breathing unconsciously quickened in a horror. It was Myhawk, the one who defeated Sengoku without much trouble. Such a being was killed with a single strike from their foe. Sakazuki knew that he stood no chance against the man. Ha! Imu refused to believe it that for a moment, he didn't see Rowan's movement. How did he allow himself to be carried all the way here in an instant? Out of rage, and out of this bizarre feeling entering his mind, Imu turned his enraged eyes to Sakazuki, who was cowering. So, then, Imu snarled at Sakazuki, "Are you going to run away like a useless coward?" Myhawk's sudden and unexpected death was none of his concern. Sakazuki's face paled. Either way, he knew that he too is going to die. Sakazuki, in midst of fear, managed to grab onto the sliver of resolve. If I were to go down, then Puk Sakazuki was at the loss of words. Looking down, he saw the sea stone spike coming through his chest. He slowly raised his head at his right and saw Imu staring at him with a vivid disdain. Sakazuki wasn't sprout any more words. Just like how Kong has fallen, he dropped into the water and painted it in red. Splash Boha! What the hell are you doing? The man in white lightning, Rowan, laughed. Killing someone on your side? For what purpose? I am the sole king of the world. Imu proclaimed angrily, my word is the law. My action is the judgment. If I deemed him as unworthy of living, then he shall be dead. Well, Rowan slowly approached Imu in the middle of the sky, as if walking, I was planning to kill him anyway. And you shall suffer the same fate. Your struggle will yield no result, and the absolute truth that I stand on top of the world cannot be subverted. Vroom! The whole sea shook, before the tremendous mass of water arose at once. Upon Imu's command, they sharpened and crackled in Conqueror's hockey, in fusion, ready to pierce through Rowan without any mercy. Then, they abruptly shattered. All of them, all of a sudden, without any contact, shattered away. It was an unbelievable scene. The sea stone that hasn't been shattered from a pure force before was destroyed like a frail glass. Imu's eyes shook. He lost all calmness and arrogance that he held, and he slowly turned his attention to Rowan in a complete shock. Why, are you surprised? Imu couldn't believe it. No, he won't accept this truth. He was supposed to be the absolute being in this world, and there wasn't supposed to be any power capable of destroying the sea stone. So, who are you? Imu whispered with bloodshot eyes. My power is irreversible, indestructible, and unpreventable. What witchery have you committed? Rowan snorted in amazement. Emu probably was the most messed up person he's ever come across. I refuse. I refuse. I refuse. The hallucination. Yes, that must be your strength. Emu muttered as if trying to convince himself, wildly opening his arms wide. The entire sea around them was lifted up, daring to crash onto Rowan. Pazt Rowan's brilliant hockey exploded around him. The chaotic sea was suppressed in a single go, and all that remained was Emu's trembling form. I am the great immortal, destined to forever rule this world full of filths. The fate is on my side, it must be. Rowan was currently experiencing one person's mental breakdown. The man who believed himself to be the god of the world fell into the pit upon realizing that he was just a human being like any other, that there lied a power above his own. I refuse this blasphemy. Emu's body burst into the awakened form of human fruit model, Umi, once again. The black clouds surrounding his body, the black liquid-like attire, and the elongated black crown, Deus. But that wasn't the end. The entire sea lifted up, began to blacken in a fearsome manner. Was this the sea, or the manifestation of Emu's will? It was unclear. However, it didn't matter to Rowan. The blackened sea swirled above the sky. Its size increased continuously without a stop, and soon, the whole world saw the entire sky swirling in a mix of black water and gray clouds altogether. Then, they clustered into one extremely condensed black-colored sea stone sphere. Its size was almost the same as the sea stone poles that Emu effortlessly produced previously, but everything else was incomparable. Without the doubt, this was Emu's maximum capability. Machina. Then, within the darkened sky, the black spear dropped down to where Rowan stood. The wind whistled, the sea churned, and the lightning struck from all around. Reflecting Emu's rage, the whole world moved furiously. In the middle of this chaos, Rowan, the man who was lit up in the bright white lightning, held his hand out before clenching into a fist. Past the subtle noises of white lightning crackling around his fist. At first glance, it was underwhelming in comparison to the gigantic black spear that was threatening to penetrate Rowan. Yet, Emu couldn't erase the sense of dread within him. Staring at Rowan's figure made him feel human, just like the feeling that he felt over countless years ago when he used to live as a human being. And now, 200-layer convergence, 200-hit, entropic imbuement, hockey incorporation. This is the result of my 4 years, Emu. Rowan punched forth, Ragna. His fist met the black spear, drive. Then the bright flash occurred, engulfing the whole world. The new dawn was rising. Chapter 195. Gone was the night. Appeared the day, with the sun shining above the sky brightly, with all the clouds and mists having been washed away, and with the magnificent view of the all-blue. A miracle. A miracle is happening. Dragon, who was lying on the ground while barely holding onto his consciousness, whispered. Emu, the man whose strength seemed to know no bound, was helplessly receiving the bombardment of incredibly fast punches without any chance of retaliation. Boom, 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 the sky was twinkling from the shattered pieces of the black sea stone spear that Emu previously generated, indicating that Rowan's punch has effortlessly destroyed it in one go. Boom, Emu felt as if his eyes are going to pop out from the sheer impact of Rowan's punches. Each and every single punch contained not only that mysterious hockey that he couldn't find a way to counter, but also the combination of armament hockey, internal destruction, and consecutive bounce forces. Rowan's punches accumulated, and the succeeding bounce forces converged and resonated, reinforcing the destructive force that was flipping Emu inside out. Boom, Emu vomited a ton of blood, having received a severe damage from the inside. It was unlike any other that he has experienced before, and if hurts, it hurts, it hurts. He was undergoing an agony that he has never been through. Boom, he desperately raised his hands up, generating the sea stone spikes from all sides to stab Rowan. They effortlessly shattered. Boom, Emu screamed as Rowan's punch slammed into his cheek and was sent blasting downward to where the sea lied. Oosha? But before Emu could do anything, before Emu could afford enough time to react, defend, or foresee the future, Rowan was in front of him again in an instant. Then, Boom Emu was knocked upward this time, with Rowan blasting an uppercut onto Emu's exposed chest. "If you are over 800 years old," Rowan growled ferociously as he slammed countless punches onto the severely injured Emu nonstop, not bothering to conceal his fury directed at the latter. "Fuck, roll in the grave like the rotten shit you are." Boom. Emu found his back slammed against the piece of land that lied on the surface of the water. The cracks were generated from the sheer impact, and Emu found his body trembling from the pure stress. Then Rowan dropped from the sky onto his exposed form, striking his kick onto Emu's face. Boom, the whole land cracked into multiple pieces upon the impact alone, and as Emu let out a shaky expression of pain on his face, splash, he fell into the water along with Rowan. In water, Emu, though he was halfway into the world of unconscious, gathered his thoughts. "I have the advant." Piaziti, the body of water, bubbled. Rowan's will dominated the devil's own, and something unbelievable happened. The operation of his bounce fruit within the sea. The water all around them began to bubble and evaporate. It was due to Rowan's utilization of zone. Emu could do nothing but look at Rowan in terror as the latter's fist impacted upon his face once again, causing him to drill down to the depth of the sea. Boom, the whole sea parted. As if parting the way for Rowan, it provided the gap for him to reach Emu at a blinding speed again. Boom, Emu lost the count by now. Just how many times was he hit? Boom, Emu now didn't even know where he was lying onto. Boom, yet the assault didn't stop. No, in fact, with Emu now lying on the bottom of the sea, Rowan made his appearance in front of the former again, with his eyes blazing more bright than ever. Boom, the punches became even faster. What Emu believed to be the fastest in the world wasn't Rowan's fastest. Boom, just how many punches were slamming onto him per second? 1,000? 10,000s? 100,000s? 1,000,000? Boom, Emu didn't know. In fact, he didn't even know if he was alive at this point. He couldn't think, but scream at his impaired lung in never-ending pain. Rowan's blurry punches didn't know when to stop. The cracks of the ground below Emu was widening. The hot steam emitted out from the gap, indicating that any further impact may result in a volcanic eruption. Vroom, Rowan simply stated, "Shut up." Boom, by slamming another punch onto Emu. The impact from Rowan's punch effectively stopped the eruption. Subsequently, Rowan lifted Emu up by grabbing onto the latter's head, before landing another uppercut, sending the semi-corpse all the way back to the ground. Boom, Emu, while flying on the sky, sprayed the blood all across. His skin was visibly pale, and his eyes were hollow. He seemed to have lost all will to fight, or to live even. Boom, and he fell back to the island where the Grimheart pirates and others were lying powerlessly. Here, Emu saw Rowan casually approaching him with his fist crackling in that enigmatic white lightning. Past Rowan opened his fist and motioned as if gripping onto something. Ragna blade. The thin sword constituted out of white lightning burst into the existence. Its existence dominated Emu's will. It effectively shred his remaining resolve to survive. How pointless. If he couldn't enjoy the eternal rule over the world, then what was the point of his actions up until now? Once upon a time, there was a moon. All it was capable of was reflecting the sun's light and providing a dim light within the darkness. Ever since it sighted the sun, which shone brilliantly and brightened up the whole world in warmth, it has been jealous. Why was I born this way? Why sun, and not me? Such thoughts continued to pester the moon. As time passed on, the moon's jealousy intensified. It didn't know when to end, and before it knew the eclipse, the moon has completely covered the sun. If I can't do what sun can, then I will simply make everyone forget about sun. The sunlight ceased to reach the earth. Instead of reflecting the sunlight, the moon blocked it, sending the world back into the darkness. For 800 years, it has been so, and now, swoosh, it was no more. And here is the dawn. Rowan muttered as the sword of white lightning faded away, with Emu's decapitated head flying up in the air before falling down to the ground. And thus came the end of the greatest war that the world has ever experienced. the World War, a bonfire, a brightly lightened moon, music, party, delicious foods, and One Piece Rowan found himself laughing uncontrollably. Those amazing idiots, they filled the bomb machinery with alcohol and activated it. Gwahahaha. The reign of alcohol. Now this is the greatest treasure of the world. Cavendish shouted jovially as he held his tongue out, savoring the alcohol that was constantly being poured down from the sky. This is so good. Bonnie shouted wildly while munching onto the mountain of food, ignoring the pleas of her crew members. Garp. Come back here, you idiot. You were literally a donut 3 days ago. Sengoku barked as Garp joined the group that were dancing all together, holding each other by shoulders. Bwahaha. Come and join us. Sengoku. Your afro hair is going to serve as a nice disco ball. The party involving the whole world. The fishmen, the Sky Islanders, the minks, everyone from all around gathered upon receiving the news from Morgan's. Binks's dream came true. After over 800 years of delay, the party was reaching its peak. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Nice to meet all of you. I hope that I didn't scare any of you. The talking skeleton Usopp and Chopper screamed in horror. The talking skeleton. Luffy and Ace shouted with sparkling eyes. The skeleton named Brook came with a huge whale named Laboon and has begun to play the legendary music, Binks Sake. Super Frankie, the cyborg shipwright, came in along with those from the Water 7. I'm better. Cavendish shouted in jealousy before mimicking Frankie's action. Hyper-Kaiya, many women screamed in love upon sighting Cavendish. He's so cute. Handsome, marry me. Prince Cavendish. Frankie froze in his position, with a lone tear dropping from his left eye. There. Ah? Frankie jumped in fright as someone patted his shoulder. Turning around, he saw a black-haired woman, Robin, standing with an amusement in her eyes. You are just like Urich. Shit, and what happened after this? Dan, on the other hand, was scratching his head while repairing the journal that previously got wet due to Farrell's soul pebble. Neg. Farrell stood next to Dan in guilt, trying to find a way to help the latter. Nay. In realization, Farrell utilized his ability to put a life into the journal itself. Ahahaha, I'm alive now. Huh. Dan's eyes widened in amazement. Foodud, Luffy shouted, having finished his food. More FOODDDD, HHHHH. You eat too much. Carmen, with a tick mark on her forehead, slammed Luffy on the head. Agreed. Sanji nodded vigorously. Carmen Swan, please teach me how to make that dish. And then, we found this huge storm coming up ahead. On the other hand, Urich was sitting in the middle of the Sky Islanders, telling them of the tales that the Grimheart pirates went through. Though it was quite scary, through the teamwork altogether, we managed to survive what was thought to be impossible. So, you guys joined the Revolutionary Army and fought against the kingdoms? The weaklings like you? Nami, who was with the people from the Cocoyasi village, said with squinted eyes. Weaklings? Who's the weakling here? Nami? One villager shouted in denial. You want to fight?
Fine.
Nami snorted, before holding her palm out with a grin. That's going to cost you 10,000 belly, though. Nojiko sweated along with the rest of the Twin Cats pirates. Same old Nami. Spadina, who was next to Nami, whispered in her left ear, Tell them that I accept coins only. Rosinante, he was like a son to me. Sengoku, who was holding onto Garp to prevent the latter from reopening his wounds accidentally, spoke to Law. So that's the reason why he decided to betray us. He was an idiot. Law bickered, though he seemed to be in a sorrow at the same time. But he was the one who gave me the will to live on. It was completely disastrous, but that's how a party was supposed to be, Rowan thought. Everyone laughing and treating one another without any prejudice, without faking anything. This is probably what Binks wanted. How strange. Rowan, who chugged down the bottle of rum in his hand, couldn't help but mutter, The night? It's exactly the same as when I saw 4 years ago, after having been rescued by you. The starry night, full of stars. The day where he woke up from his naive self. The day where he was miraculously prevented from being sent off to the Marine headquarters for the purpose of experimentation, and the day where he was saved by his best partner of all time. Yet, many things changed. Karina chuckled. Here we are, now completely free of any worry. Her supposed family by blood, the band royalty, they were as the cold corpses, killed at the beginning of the World War. Weird. I thought I would feel a sense of exhilaration when I saw them in their misery. But I didn't feel anything, as if being completely unrelated to them. Rowan smiled. Well, I'm happy for you. To be free of all concerns. That's the life that we've been wishing for, isn't it? Yeah. Karina smiled as well. We struggled until the end, and finally got what we wanted. But Rowan and Karina slowly closed in, before sharing a kiss. What do you plan to do now? Settle down just like you said? Rowan let out a laugh. Quite funny, really. I think these sales changed me. The idea of settling down no longer interests me. Karina looked at Rowan with a curiosity. Then? The sea is calling me. Rowan whispered. To explore the world. No matter how the world will change from now on, I am a pirate. To enjoy the freedom, to go on an adventure, and to help all our crew members to achieve their goals. There's still so many things that I want to do. He peered into Karina with affection. So, for a while longer, will you join me? Without my navigator, how will I do this? Wherever you go, Karina whispered. I follow. Then, I guess. Rowan adjusted the captain's hat on his head. Our journey is going to go up for a while longer. Epilogue. The world was initially full of chaos, unable to understand the sudden change that has happened around the world. The abortion of slavery. The disclosure of the world government's true face. The official apology from the former celestial dragon, Don Quixote Josgard, and his official statement to donate the entire wealth of now-deceased celestial dragons to everyone who had their own share of sufferings. Along with him, the remaining Marine with rightful justice within their minds. In the former Revolutionary Army, they established a new system. The system that harbors the democratic nature. Though it was far from perfect, none would argue that their lives haven't gotten better. Pirates? Surprisingly, though the lethal Morganers proved to be a menace to the society, the troubles that they imposed wasn't as serious as they were during the age of the great pirates. There lied one reason for such. One Piece is the fucking party tool. According to the Pirate King, aka Uchiha B. Rowan, the man who changed the entire world. He first flipped the whole East Blue upside down through the establishment of the Angel Pirates. Then, entering the Grand Line, he destroyed whoever stood in front of him. The Marine bases, their reputations, the name value of the Celestial Dragons, all were of no concern to this madman. Uncaring of the consequences that will follow, he blasted all of them away. And finally, the man has rose above what they thought to be impossible. The victory over 2 emperors of the sea. While the others fall, he stood as the sole conqueror of the new world. Traveling beyond the edge of the sea, he discovered the One Piece and succeeded the title of Pirate King from Joel D. Roger. For no doubt, he will forever be remembered by the entire world. No one, absolutely no one will be capable of covering such an unbelievable history. In the far future, the Bounce Bounce fruit will be held as the legendary fruit sold by an auction at an unbelievable price. Though the smart ones will quickly realize that it is a pretty weak fruit in comparison to the other. Are you sure about this? Dragon, the one who was working day and night for the stabilization of the world, asked, You are the reason that we are standing. If you wish to rule as the king, there is nothing we can do about it. If you wish foe an immortal surgery, law has no choice but to obey you. With all that power, the life of a pirate is all that you need? Hey! Luffy expressed his annoyance at Dragon during then. Don't you trash-talk the pirates. It's the life better than any other. From Luffy's left, Bartolomeo whispered to Sanji, Does Captain know that that man is his father? Sanji shrugged. Rowan answered, Yep. I don't want any of those disgusting politics in my life. BGM. Bink Sake. Hey guys, Rowan gathered the attention of his crew. Ready to sail? After the destruction of the Red Line, many things happened. Not only did the entire map change to a large extent, but the areas thought to be unexplorable due to the separation were now open. With the revelation of One Piece, the world has now entered the new era, the age of romance. Freedom to do whatever one desires, to sail to wherever one wants, to sing and play music whenever one wishes to do so, to hang out with whoever one finds a liking in. It was the rise to the age full of artisans and adventurers, ready to explore and thoroughly enjoy this new world, said Luffy. All sorts of crazy ideas were circulating around the world. Without Dr. Vegapunk's imaginations and skills, the world's technology too was improving at a rapid pace. Rowan wasn't an exception. Watching Karina's amazing singing skill, he decided to learn an instrument. Learning them wasn't hard, thanks to his eyes copying the movements of the world's finest musicians. First, the violin. As Karina sang, Rowan played the violin from the side. The crew jovially hummed as they traveled across the mountains and seas, exploring this vast world. However, something felt incomplete. A certain oomph was lacking, Rowan thought. Therefore, he learned a cello, utilizing the manipulation of armament hockey, emission, and his ability to multitask. Rowan effortlessly played two instruments at once. MHM, much better, but not enough. Piano, drum, guitar. Rowan learned whatever was available to him, and soon enough, people began to call him the maestro. Meanwhile, the crew traveled even higher from the Sky Island and discovered that the Lunarians, who were thought to be extinct, were living in seclusion. Oh! Dan, with sparkling eyes, would record the full details on the Alive journal. Cavendish, through the use of the new type of Den Den Mushi, began his career as a virtual celebrity. According to him, his popularity was currently tied with this mysterious diva named Yuta. Along the path of the journey, Carmen would be challenged by the many famous cooks from left and right. Not even once has she lost, and it was the matter of time before she was termed as the world's best cook. Urich would sometimes mutter the names of his deceased former crew members. However, with a still grin on his face, he stayed with the Grimheart pirates throughout the entire journey, from the depth of the sea to the sky, even higher than where he lived by. Alfred has begun his career as an inventor. Finding interest in many ideas posed onto the world, he gathered the materials along the journey and built the freaky machines that brought even further enjoyment to the crew. Feral? With the muscular and striking appearance that he had in comparison to any other horses, he would attract the attention of all female horses, just like his best pal, Cavendish, does. They were quite similar in many ways. Robin has gone deeper within the interpretations of the poneglyph. Along with the journal found in Laugh Tale, and with all the poneglyphs that the Grimheart pirates came along the way, she worked to restore the detailed history of the Void Century, finding the joy in doing so. And Dan, say it, say it, say it. Upon the crew's continued persuasion, he finally said it. Ha, my real name is? Everyone gulped. Nori Gatling. That was disappointing. Rowan pointed at Dan. Your name is now officially Dan. The crew continued their sails. Upon hearing that Luffy managed to build a spaceship with the help of many others, they barged into the scene and enjoyed the ride. The travel to the moon. How come I can breathe in here? What did you say, Rowan? Upon hearing Karina, Rowan pretended as if he didn't say anything. Nothing. Robin's eyes lit up as strange runes and carvings were found, along with, what are these cute machines? Alfred rubbed his palms together with an interest. Oh. Cavendish took a step back. Get away from him. Kikik, come here. You cute little muffins. Shishishishi. Hey Sanji, can you cook them? No, you idiot. An enjoyable journey indeed. Many years passed by. The continuous sails with nothing but joy. But alas, nothing lasts forever. Prominence. It seemed that it was the time for her to go. Thank you for carrying us all along, Promi. Rowan whispered as he touched the burning frame of the ship. It was fun. Just as you said. Some of the crew members at the back were crying. Many others were standing at the back, watching the death of the legendary ship that will be renowned by the shipwrights for eternity. Hereforth, the Grimheart pirates are disbanded. Rowan moved back into the Cocoyasi village, along with Karina. The members all scattered away, whether it was below the sea or above the sky. It wasn't much of a problem, though. with Karina being able to create portals at any time. Welcome back, Rowan. Heh, how long has it been? Rowan watched as the villagers greeted him with a smile. I left here at 17. So, 12 years. He finally settled down, at the house where he used to live with his family long ago. Then, a marriage. Everyone came, whether it was the newly established government, the crew members, or the friends traveling ++F all across the world. Rowan officially took Karina as his spouse, as the sole companion. Then came a birth of a new life. What shall her name be? Wiping the tears that he found in his eyes, Rowan said while holding the baby girl in his arms. Dan, who was standing at the back, raised his hand up. How about Wob Zoom? He was teleported all the way to the moon by Karina, who was visibly annoyed. I say, Rowan suggested, Scarlet. Huh. Karina muttered with squinted eyes. That's surprisingly normal. Knowing the naming history of Rowan's family, Karina was expecting the worst. Scarlet it is then. So, Rowan felt the urge to cringe, but said nonetheless, Why Uchiha Scarlet? PFF, that's your own daughter, woman. Many time passed by. The young grew up, replacing the old generation. The Cocoyasi village, it has become a huge city, thanks to the sheer amount of wealth that Rowan had. 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Rowan felt as if the time was accelerating. It flew by day, and what was gone didn't return. But regardless, it was a fun journey. Surprisingly, it was Rowan of all to leave the world first. Surrounded by everyone all around, Rowan made one final smile on his bed. Thank you for everything, all of you. His hand was tightly held by Karina. Though she was vividly aged, in Rowan's eyes, she was beautiful as always. And on his left, his daughter, Scarlet, stood. Do you like your name, Scarlet? She nodded with a teary smile. Yeah, never once have I thought it as bad. Rowan laughed heartily for the final time. Bo ha ha ha, that's good, before passing away. Welcome back. Though many years passed, Rowan recognized that voice very well. The white orb-like being. You know the process. Rowan found a smile on his face. There won't be a mistake this time, right? Perhaps. Rowan slowly gripped the dice with a nostalgic expression. Many things happened. Much time passed by. What was initially thought as the fake world constituted of imagination of the man named Eiichiro Oda was now more real than the life Rowan lived before the reincarnation. But it was now the time to leave, and without the memory. It was the true death of the man named Rowan, but he termed it as the rest. Bohaha. Rowan laughed as the dice left his hand. What a life it was! That's the end of this tale. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you the next series. Peace.